Yeah, have a good night. Okay. Yeah, we could have some conflict there. Yeah. Me neither. Yeah.
Okay, are we about ready to start? Perfect. Good evening, guys. Let's go ahead and call the work session to order. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Ted so we can go through tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight we have a relatively long and involved agenda. So I'll go through now, and we do have a couple of things we can put on consent if it's the will of the commission. I think most of it's going to be heard, but so we'll start with item number 1, DRH 20-543 at 1714 North 26th Street, and it's in a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a single-family residential structure and detached garage on a vacant substandard lot in the north end, in the expanded North End Historic District. And so we are proposing that one for consent. We haven't heard any issues from the public on that one, so we can have that one on consent if it's the will of the commission. The next one's the big one of the evening, item number 2, DRH 2112, and this is the one with the that got deferred last month because the commission wasn't able to come to a decision on it, so it was deferred to this month. And that's the one where the trees were removed, request to reroute the canal, leave it exposed and reroute it on the property to make room for a new house, new single-family structure and detached garage. Some items have come back and forth to you on this one. You did receive a memo from the applicant's attorney, and then you also received a memo from our city attorney, Mary, on that. I don't know if you've had a chance to read through that yet. You know, essentially what staff is asking for on this one tonight is just an up or down vote, either approve it or deny it. Deferring it again or pushing it out further, you know, we start to run into issues with due process on this project. So I would just say it either, you know, and I'm not, you know, the commission can do what it wants with it, but as staff, we're requesting that it either be approved or denied tonight. And if it's denied with specific reasons for denial, so that the applicant can come back on that as well. There was a question on whether the canal was approved or not by staff, and part of Mary's response to that in her memo basically detailed that, you know, the city is considering that approval went out and it was pulled back by staff and brought back to the commission. So we feel like we're on solid legal ground to do that. And so we are not considering that canal move already approved. So that is something that will be decided by the commission. I don't know, Mary, did you want to expand on anything on that item? Okay. So there will be a lot of testimony on that. And another thing is the commission will need to vote to reopen the public testimony portion of the hearing because it was closed last time for deliberation. So it will need to be reopened and testimony taken.
I have a question on that, Ted. Is that something that I can move to do, like just with one fell swoop, or does another member of the commission need to make that motion?
You'll still
I'll
need
let
a
Mary
second
answer
to the
that.
vote.
But I can make the motion. Great. Perfect.
Yes, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
So I think you can just do that right at the front of that,
Perfect.
hearing.
Awesome.
Okay, so item number 3 is DRH 2161. This is a request to reconstruct the historic front porch on a contributing house. The property is located in the North End Historic District. We've received no comments on this one from the public. We can have that one on consent if the commission's okay with that, or if the commission has concerns, we can pull it off of consent. So. All right, on to item number 4. This is DRH 2172, and this is a request to also reconstruct, it's to construct an addition, to construct a basement and reconstruct the historic wraparound porch, change the primary orientation to 17th Street, and add a new door, replace windows, and add solar panels. And the siding will be removed to temporarily removed for insulation. So that one's located in the expanded North End Historic District. And that one we are going to hear. The applicant has an issue with at least one of the conditions on the application. So we'll go ahead and hear that one. Number 5, DRH 2175 at 1213 5th Street in the North End, a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a single-family structure and detached garage on a vacant lot. This one will be heard as well. I think there are some conditions on there that I think the applicant wants to discuss. Item number 6, DRH 2177, 709 West Eastman, is a certificate of appropriateness request to demolish an existing garage and to construct a garage with accessory dwelling unit. And this is located in the North End Historic District. This one will be heard as well due to some concerns by staff and some conditions that need to be further discussed. Item number 7, DRH 2178 at 1707 North 9th Street is a certificate of appropriateness request to construct the side and rear additions and a basement. The property is located also in the North End Historic District. This is one where the applicant agrees with the conditions, and we haven't heard anything from the public, so we can put that one on consent if the commission is okay with that.
I would like to hear that one, Ted.
Okay. We'll hear that one. We'll hear number 7. And item number 8 is DRH 2179, Richard Wilmot at 615 West Main Street. And this is one this is the storefront restaurant on Main Street, right across here from City Hall. This one was denied back in January by the commission. The applicant has come back with some revisions to the plan. He has hoped to meet the concerns that the commission had. This one I initially had to be heard just because it was denied. We haven't heard anything from the public, and the applicant agrees with the conditions of approval on it. So we can put it on consent or hear it either way. I guess do we want to hear that one again?
Are there any concerns based on the plans from any commission members that make you want to hear this item?
I had a question, I guess, for Ted. One of the conditions of approval said something about they can't have a concrete patio, and it has to be similar to what's in the city. And so was that allowing, was your intent to allow them to have the raised patio?
No, the intent was not to allow the raised patio, and they're actually not proposing that anymore. They're just proposing the standard temporary patio system that's removable. So what we decided, we and the commission also had an issue with that as well on the last. And in re-looking at that as staff, we also thought that that was probably something that we didn't want to see. Those sidewalk areas are improved specifically for the downtown, and we really don't want to see those covered and raised with concrete. So the intent of that was to just allow standard temporary patio in front of the restaurant, nothing permanent. And the applicant it was unclear on his application to me that he was pulling that back, but in talking to him on the phone, he said the intent was to not do the permanent raised patio anymore.
Okay, I'm fine with it on consent then. Thank you.
Great, we'll put that on consent.
And that's it. Are there any questions?
No questions here, but I would like to have, I'd like to hear DRH 21-61. It was proposed for consent, but I'd like to hear it, please.
Okay. So for now, it looks like we have consent item number 1 and item number 8, and the rest we'll hear.
Great. Okay. There aren't any other questions for Ted. Ted, do you have anything else?
I don't.
Okay, great. We'll go ahead and call the work session and we'll start the hearing at 6 p.m. Good evening. Today is the 29th of March, 2021, and this is the scheduled time and place for the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. I'm Chairperson Montoto, and I now call the meeting to order. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Here.
Koski,
Here.
Maroney,
Here.
Weaver,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Pape,
Here.
Montoto,
Here.
Kintai,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. Before we go ahead and approve the minutes, I'm going to turn things over to Ted for our virtual introduction.
Actually forgot about that.
Sorry, Ted. Are you prepared?
Yeah.
Great.
Yep. Good evening and welcome to the City of Boise Historic Preservation Commission meeting. A few things to start out for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. You will be promoted to panelist and will rejoin the meeting after a slight delay. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. If the chat function isn't available to you, you can email zoninginfo@cityofboise.org with any technical issues. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. Then we will go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who signed up on the online sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually or in person. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Tonight's agenda and proceedings will be almost the same as in-person hearings, except we might have a bit of a delay as we work through the technology. Please be courteous and patient with us while we venture through this virtual format. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ted. Have all the commission members had a chance to review the minutes from the February 22nd, 2021 meeting? Does anyone have any comments or changes to the minutes? Seeing and hearing none, I will now take a motion on the February 22nd, 2021 minutes.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
That was Commissioner Maroney. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Pape,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. We have one possible item for consent this evening, and that is item number 8, DRH 21-00079, Richard Wilmot at 615 West Main Street. Does the commission have any questions on this matter? Is the applicant present? Thanks for your patience, everyone. Can we move forward with the application being on consent without the applicant?
Yes, and this, Madam Chair, sorry, he was emailed me that he was having problems getting logged in. On this one, we can go ahead and keep it on consent.
Perfect.
I'm sure he'd be okay with that. Hopefully he can get logged in by the time we hear his other item.
Sure, great. Should we wait then to approve the consent agenda until he hops on, or are we okay to move?
I think we're okay.
Okay, great. Staff, was there any written opposition to this matter?
Madam Chair, there was not.
Is there anyone present tonight wishing to testify against this matter? Seeing none, and based on the lack of opposition, item DRH 21-00079 will be placed on the consent agenda. I move that the consent agenda and all items on the consent agenda be approved subject to the findings and conclusions and conditions of approval agreed upon for each application. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Pape,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. We'll now go ahead and move to the remaining items on the consent agenda, or on the agenda, excuse me. The first item that we'll be hearing tonight is item number 1. This was proposed for consent, but we do have an individual here in person wanting to testify on this matter, so this will be heard. And this is item number 1, DRH 20-00543, Luke Caldwell, located at 1714 North 26th Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties with our login, so the applicant on this matter is trying to get logged in right now.
No problem.
Okay. Want to share the... DRH 2543 is a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a single-family structure and detached garage on a substandard lot. The property is located in the expanded North End Historic District and is considered non-contributing in the Historic District. This is an aerial of the property. As you can see, it is vacant at this time. And this is a site plan. One of the conditions of approval on this is that the applicant double check the front setback for the property. It may need a variance, though it is a substandard lot, which is allowed reduced setbacks depending on the adjacent property setbacks. The adjacent property to the north has a very large setback, so this one will likely have to meet the standard 15-foot setback. That is a condition of approval in the application. The garage is a one-car garage with a surface adjacent paved surface parking to the south of it. All setbacks and backup space other than the front are proposed to be met. These are the elevations. It's essentially a 1.5-story structure. And these are the side elevations. And this is the one-car garage. And these are some photos of the adjacent properties. As you can see, this is the property to the north. It's got a significant setback, so it's not likely that they can attain the reduced setback allowed for the substandard by the substandard lot ordinance. Staff does recommend approval of DRH 2543 with the conditions of approval listed in the staff report. And hopefully we have our applicant on the line. That one is Luke Caldwell.
While we wait for the applicant, are there any questions for Ted? Oh, I'm sorry, from the commission. We'll have a chance for public testimony in just a moment.
Did you send it to Richard or do I need to? I have his email. My apologies, we just have applicants that can't get in right now, so,
We can't do a whole lot without our applicants, so
yeah.
thanks for your patience, everyone.
We're trying to send them a new link. No, Luke. And if it's our fault. About Byron. Yeah, I just emailed him. Yes. Well, Madam Chair, we might need to move on to the next item.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. Is the applicant present for our next item? Yeah.
Madam Chair, it looks like the applicants are logged in.
Okay,
for our
great.
next one.
We're going to move on to item number 2. This is DRH 21-00012, Patrick Garrity at 717 North 19th Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Madam Chair.
My apologies
Oh.
for our technical difficulties.
Oh, sorry.
Just in terms of the public hearing, we'll need a motion to reopen.
To reopen item number 1.
No,
Right, you're right. I'm sorry. I move to reopen item number 2, DRH 21-00012, for public testimony. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Victoria, will you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Pape,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Ted, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a certificate of appropriateness application that was deferred from last month due to the commission's inability to come to a decision on the project. It is a certificate of appropriateness request to demolish a non-contributing house and construct a single-family residential structure and detached garage. The request also includes rerouting the canal and retroactive approval for the removal of trees. This property is located in the expanded north end and classified currently as non-contributing. This is an aerial map of the property. It's a substandard lot sitting on the corner of Ada and 19th. The house is located in the back southwest corner, and then the Boise Canal extends along the property sort of diagonally like this. This is a photo of couple of photos of the house from the street in the close-up. So the background on this, I'll be brief since we heard this. We did receive code compliance complaints over the removal of 10 trees on the property, and a certificate of appropriateness application was submitted for retroactive approval, which was appealed. A certificate of appropriateness application was submitted for relocation of the canal. We did release a certificate of appropriateness for this, but after reviewing the appeal application, it was clear that they intended to appeal the canal as well. So we did pull that back and told them this needed to come to the commission for review. So that we did consider that to be appealed along with the removal of the trees. A certificate of appropriateness application then was submitted for demolition of the existing house, which was also and new construction, which was likely to be appealed, as everything on this property was getting appealed. So we compiled everything into one application and brought it before the commission. This is the proposed site plan. You see the garage back in this area, and then the main, the house toward the center of the lot. Where the canal roughly and I'll show you some more slides of this, where the canal roughly cut across the center. The canal is proposed to be relocated along the perimeter of the lot, running along that north property line and along the front. And it is proposed to remain open as an amenity to the neighborhood and the property itself. So it's not going to be buried or tiled. It is going to remain an open canal. And so these the trees that were removed. Again, 10 trees removed on this property. And the green dots roughly show where they are located. And then this is the replanting plan. 7 trees will go back on the property with the new project. And here's a visual showing where the canal exists now. Again, cutting roughly diagonally across the middle of the property. And then the applicant is proposing to run it where the red lines are at, generally adjacent to the property line on the north and east side. And again, it's proposed to remain an open canal and will require safety fencing. These are the elevations of the proposed new house, front and rear. This is the north street side elevation. And this is the south elevation, interior. And the one-story garage. These are some photos of neighboring houses. The houses around are generally 1.5 story to partial 2-story. And then there's a full 2-story just to the south of the property, which is here on the right. We did receive public comment on this in support and in opposition to the project. The comments in support said that the design generally, and this is just a general summary of the comments, commented that the house is compatible with the neighborhood, will improve the site, and that the canal will remain open and more accessible to the public. The points of opposition were that the trees were removed without a permit, the canal should remain in its traditional location, and that the property should be contributing, and that the survey is outdated. So as discussed last time, the survey is from, I believe, 1978 and appears to have been done, for the probably for the Harrison Boulevard National Register Historic District. And when the expanded North End Historic District was implemented, the property was not resurveyed. It's unclear why it was not resurveyed. They may have determined that because it already had a survey, they were just sticking with that survey that they had. So staff does recommend approval of DRH 2112 with the conditions of approval listed in the staff report.
Great. Thank you, Ted. And commission members, just for the sake of time, because we do have a long evening, I'm going to ask that questions wait until after the applicant has presented, and then questions can be asked for Ted and the applicant at that point. Is the applicant present?
Did you raise hand, Jeff? I did.
Hi, please state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
Chairman Montoto, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Ted, if I could share my screen, that would be great.
Okay, Josh can do that for you.
Great. And if you don't mind just stating your name and address for the record, please.
All right, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Jeff Bauer. My address is 601 West Bannock in Boise. I'm a land use attorney with Givens Pursley, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant. Also here with me tonight are Pat and Molly Garrity, and their project architect, Liam McMillan, is on the phone if there are any design questions for us. First, I do want to thank planning staff as well as the commission. We appreciate all the time you spent on this and the opportunity to provide additional comment tonight at this hearing. We've reviewed the conditions of approval in the staff report, and we're in agreement with all of the proposed conditions. We also agree that approval, as staff recommended, is proper under the circumstances. I do know there was testimony on this last month. I wasn't there, unfortunately. I do want to provide a brief overview so that my comments tonight are in a bit of context, but I promise to go fast. Tonight, there are 3 separate certificates of appropriateness before the commission. The first, as Ted mentioned, deals with the removal of trees on the property. The second certificate deals with relocating an irrigation facility on the property. And the third certificate deals with demolition and construction of a new home on the property. We think it's important that the commission takes each of these applications and looks at them discreetly, because they're all at a different stage in the application process, and they all have asked for specific land use entitlements, some of which have been granted. I'll start with the tree COA. Patrick and Molly Garrity with me tonight, applicants. Their folks, their parents, are Tom and Andrea Colgan. They're the owners of this property and the applicants, in my mind. They were interested in this property because it's next door to their daughter, Molly, and their grandchildren. Because the existing home would not support their family, they hired consultants to determine what options they'd have to redevelop the property. First, they hired your ex-colleague, Beth Lassen, former Historic Preservation Commissioner and architect in the Valley. Great deal of familiarity with the historic districts to analyze the property's contributing status. Ms. Lassen looked at the record, primarily the survey, spoke with city staff, and ultimately determined correctly that the property was non-contributing. Applicants also hired their project architect, Ms. McMillan. She did the same due diligence, looked at the property history, spoke with historic planning staff. Again, the result was the same. The property was non-contributing. The Colgans also hired, as another consultant, SPF water engineers. These folks were hired specifically with respect to the irrigation facility. SPF approached Boise Canal Company with a plan to pipe the canal, got the canal company's preliminary approval for the plan with some preliminary designs. So with confirmation from land use consultants, city staff, and the canal company that this project was feasible, the Colgans did go ahead and purchase this property with the intent to redevelop it. In November of 2020, the applicants hired a recommended tree service, Brown's Tree Service, to remove several trees on the property. This tree removal was to accommodate this remodel. And as Mr. Garrity spoke to you last month, they did specifically inquire with the arborists as to whether permits were necessary. So here's just a screenshot of a text message thread with Mr. Garrity and the tree service arborists. You can see there that we made an inquiry. We got bad information, but there was certainly no intent to circumvent any process here. As was conveyed last time, a great deal of regret for this decision, and apologize to the city and our neighbors. Moving forward, as Ted mentioned, this violation, the removal of the trees without permits, has been referred to the proper city authorities. That's the city attorney and code enforcement. We haven't heard anything from them yet, but they are the bodies that will address this violation. So after the trees were removed, Mr. Venegas reached out to Mr. Garrity and asked him to file a certificate of appropriateness to remove the trees after the fact. Applicants promptly did that. I believe it was 1 or 2 days later, they filed the certificate of appropriateness to remove the trees. This certificate was granted on January 5th of this year. It includes a condition of approval that the applicants implement a tree mitigation plan, which is various plantings all around the property with large caliper trees, heights ranging from 10 to 20 feet to mitigate that removal. This application was appealed timely. So the application, the certificate was timely appealed. It was issued on the 5th and an appeal was filed in the early morning hours of January 15th, within 10 days of issuance. So this is properly before you tonight on appeal. We're asking for this commission to uphold Mr. Venegas's administrative decision to approve it. At this point, there is no reason to reverse Mr. Venegas's decision. The trees are already removed, and an approval or upholding that decision only ensures that the tree mitigation plan is properly implemented. So now I'll turn to the canal. This application to relocate the canal was filed shortly after the tree removal certificate was issued. So January 7th, this was filed. And what it does, as plainly stated by Mr. Venegas, it asks to relocate the canal from its present location to the perimeter of the property. Originally, we planned to pipe this facility, but based on feedback from the neighbors, we did decide to adjust the plan to leave this open as an amenity for the neighborhood. You can see in this slide, these are engineered plans that Boise Canal Company has signed off on at this point. The redesign will include improved canal walls, so there'll be stacked rock as opposed to the cracked concrete walls that are there now. And the relocation will also provide additional open water. So we're going to go from 91 feet to approximately 114 feet. And this is important because we also heard comments from neighbors that this is a facility used by local waterfowl and critters as habitat. So with the stacked rock wall and the additional length, we're improving this facility and making it more usable. It will not be fenced. It will remain visible through a wrought iron style fence for safety. So this application was approved on January 15th. Its certificate of appropriateness was issued, and notice went out to the neighbors. This application was approved after the first appeal was filed. Our position is that you cannot appeal a decision before it is issued. So this certificate of appropriateness as to the canal, as of today, has never been appealed, and our position is that it is final and unappealable. Again, it's important for the city to follow its own procedures. This may be a small application on a single house, but large applications are filed all the time with significant importance, and it's important that these deadlines are adhered to give everyone certainty moving forward. So even if this commission doesn't agree that this permit's final and we can move forward, which we are asking you to find tonight, this is a relocation of a facility. So there are 5 approval criteria that need to be met to uphold the administrator's decision in this case. The 5 approval criteria in front of you, I know you're all very familiar with these. These are the same criteria for demolitions. So in our written memorandum, we detailed these, but I'll briefly say we meet criteria 1, 2, 3, and 5. It's not a contributing facility. There's nothing in the record to indicate that the canal itself could be registered individually as a historic property. This won't have an adverse effect. As I discussed, we're improving, beautifying, we're not removing this. And lastly, the plans that we've submitted again will have a positive effect, keeping it open as an amenity, improving the rock walls, and making sure that the neighborhood as a whole continues to enjoy this amenity. So third certificate of appropriateness. This is the new home. So the procedural posture of this one is no decision has been made. It was deferred at your last hearing, and it's back before you tonight. So this request is to demolish a non-contributing home and replace it with a 1.5-story home with a 1,676 square foot first floor. So the base, the first floor has a square footage of 1,676 feet, reasonable size. Demolition, again, is proper in this case because we meet 4 of the 5 criteria. Going through them again bit by bit. As to category 1, factor 1, very clear in the record that this house is marked on the current survey with the city as non-contributing. Second, the evidence in the record indicates that the existing structure is not eligible for individual designation. The survey marks this box specifically. It says it's not eligible for designation. The survey also does not list any distinctive features, architectural or historical, that would lead to a contributing status or individual registration. Third, this demolition won't have an adverse impact, primarily because it's not contributing to the district. But another really important factor in category 3 is adverse impact on adjacent properties. The Garrity's own the only adjacent property. They've submitted multiple written comments and testimony on this application. They're in favor of it, and the evidence in the record shows it will not have an adverse impact on their property. Lastly, as to factor 5, we have submitted plans for a redeveloped site, and the home that we've submitted, Miss McClellan, Leah, the architect, has gone through great lengths to analyze the city's historic design review criteria and prepare designs and elevations that meet all of those criteria. Your city staff in the staff report did a very detailed analysis of all the criteria that we meet. But in short, we're going to use historic materials. We're going to use architecture and design that is in conformance with the block and the neighboring homes. And we meet all of the required city setbacks and height requirements. City staff did have one comment on our design. It was minor, but we want to take it seriously. City staff asked that we add a second window to the facade of the property on the north side to balance the home. That's fine with us, and we are in agreement with a condition of approval tonight to add a window to that facade. Lastly, I do want to touch briefly on reclassification. I know this came up in the hearing last month, and plain and simple, our position is that reclassification of this property at this time is improper under the city code. During the pendency of a certificate of appropriateness, which is what we have now, staff is required to confirm the property's classification. In this case, Mr. Venegas did just that. His report to the commission clearly states that this is a non-contributing home. Staff did not prepare any report or make any recommendation to reclassify this property as is required under Boise City Code, section 110304 sub 20. This is what is required to reclassify property during a pending certificate of appropriateness. Certainly, this commission has the power and the authority to reclassify property in its historic districts generally, but not during a pending application that takes away the applicant's rights. In addition, under the circumstances, given all of the due diligence the applicant undertook before purchasing this property and filing these applications, a reclassification at this point would cause a substantial hardship to the property and the applicant, and we think perhaps constitute a taking of private property. So with all of that, I don't have anything further for you tonight, but I would happily stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Are there any questions for Mr. Bauer or for Ted at this point?
Madam Chair, I have just a couple questions.
Please.
This first one's for staff. I was thinking that there had been, and I was trying to find it really quick and I couldn't, a recommendation that not only was a window added on the north side, but that the front elevation was addressed as well. Ted, could you remind me if that was the case?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, yes. So on the front of the house, hold on one second, let me bring that up. Yeah, the front of the facade of the house, so the front elevation, staff thought that the balance of openings or windows on the front of the house could be better with either the addition of an additional window on the right side of the door or enlarging the window on that elevation. And then potentially the upper gable section appears, somewhat stark, and, a window of some sort or an opening in that section as well. I don't believe these were conditions of approval. Rather, I opened these up for conversation with the commission. So there was discussion that the windows needed to be either added or enlarged on that front elevation.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bauer, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate all the work you've gone to try and address all the comments and the neighbors' comments. And I know there's still others that are out there, but I think you're doing a good job trying to address all those. I'm curious, you mentioned the north elevation. Are you also open to looking at the windows on the front elevation? I think that might be a closet in the corner there. So I couldn't tell from the plan, but I understand that might be tricky, but if you could just address that, that'd be great.
Chairman Montoto, Commissioner Weaver, we are happy with either proposal that Mr. Venegas, raised. Adding a window, enlarging a window are fine, as well as an additional window on the upper section of that facade.
Great. And then my second question is, I know that you spoke a lot about the designation of non-contributing, and I think the confusion is because the report that was done is not the traditional one that we usually see, and it actually uses a term that we don't use. I think it's non-contributory, and it maybe, had this, I'm not sure what criteria they had to determine that. And I'm curious, when you had your architect review the property, what made the determination that the property was non-contributing?
Chairman Montoto, Council, Commissioner Weaver, a few things. One was the survey, absolutely. And I think if you look through the Historic Preservation Commission's code, there is a definition of what constitutes a survey. And this survey satisfies that definition. It has the address of the home, the date it was built. It had the opportunity to list any architectural or historical features, and it has a photo. Those are sort of the baseline requirements for a survey under the city code. So we certainly meet those. As to what the architect and Ms. Lassen did, certainly they did rely on the survey, but I think more importantly was the follow-up with historic planning staff, who also relied on the survey. I think that overall, the impression that we got from Ms. Lassen and our own personal opinion is that the house was built late 1940, potentially outside the period of significance, and it doesn't have any distinguishing architectural features, and it's also a style of home, an architectural style that's not necessarily referenced or important as a style in the district. So I think all of those things added up to the conclusion that the property was non-contributing.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any final questions for Mr. Bauer or Ted before we move on? Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Bauer. Is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify?
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening. I must ask before we start, are you authorized by the board to speak on their behalf?
I am. I am the co-chair of the Historic Preservation Committee for the North End Neighborhood Association.
Wonderful. And did the board vote on this item?
The board did not vote on this item.
Okay, you can provide testimony tonight. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
Sure, thank you. I'm Kate Henwood. I live at 1116 North 20th, North 12th, here in the North End. And I'm speaking on behalf of the North End Neighborhood Association, known as NENA. Upon further reflection and input from many neighbors, NENA would like to amend its previous testimony. First, although written approval by the Boise Canal Company is a condition of approval, this critical information still hasn't appeared in the packet. Without that written approval for the proposed change in the course of the canal, consideration of this application is premature. We see this as an error in process, as the rest of the project hinges on that written approval. We would also ask that the commission consider if relocation of this portion of the canal could jeopardize the canal's existing eligibility for historic designation. We see this as a values decision that can have larger implications for canals and other significant historic features for the future of the North End Historic District. It should be noted that this canal dates back to 1866 and is shown in its current position on the Sanborn map from 1912. Further, this lot had known constraints when it was purchased. You cannot presuppose you can wipe away those constraints, as was done here. From the outset, the entire project was predicated on cutting down healthy trees and/or covering a canal, actions which chip away at the overall essence, character, and integrity of the neighborhood. We as a neighborhood association will be continuing NENA's efforts to educate neighbors, realtors, and vendors about the responsibilities and privileges of living in the historic North End in an effort to prevent unapproved tree cutting and other such unfortunate events in the future by uninformed neighbors. That is the conclusion of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henwood. Okay. Are there any individuals tonight from the public wishing to testify on this matter?
Madam Chair, I think we did have a number of people sign up to testify.
Okay, we do have one individual here in person, so let's go ahead and start with them and we'll work our way through. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is David Klinger, 1404 North 24th Street. I serve on the North End Neighborhood Association Historic Preservation Committee, but I'm testifying solely on my own behalf tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a situation that should have never happened or come before you in this form or in this condition. It begs the question of just how well the rules of the North End Historic District are being followed. Demolition of another home in acceptable condition in order to construct a larger house, necessitating the moving of a major canal structure that caused the premature removal of 10 mature trees, which now needs retroactive approval, represents a cascading series of insults to this community, and regrets aren't enough. It's a failure to properly sequence the required steps and approach to each level of review deliberately and knowledgeably. And ignorance of the rules, whether intentional or unintentional, is not a justification for forgiveness. I suggest that this sort of situation will continue occurring repeatedly as newcomers to the North End Historic District make serious errors of judgment and commit avoidable mistakes of great consequence because they either didn't know, were misadvised, or chose not to know. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If there is a written formal statement of approval from the canal company in the record, I can't find it. I hear reference tonight that it's been signed off, but if there is a formal document in the record, somehow I've missed it, and I'd like to be corrected if I'm wrong. It needs to be a formal written statement backed up by an engineering assessment or a feasibility review indicating that a major reconfiguration to this century-old water course is possible. If you don't have it, I submit to you, you do not have a complete application tonight, and you cannot act solely on a verbal consent that the canal company's approval will be forthcoming. Any approval conditioned on some sort of approval in writing coming in the future by the canal company is speculative. It represents cart before the horse decision-making. In the wake of the errors that have already occurred, our historic district is entitled to better performance by the applicant and by this body. If we're now in the business of moving canals to suit incoming, newly arrived home buyers, then that's a whole nother magnitude of review affecting our historic district in the North End. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klinger. Are there any other members tonight wishing to testify? Sounds like we have 5.
Madam Chair, first up will be Sherry Battazzo.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. This is Sherry Battazzo at 311 North 23rd Street. I'm testifying here tonight in support of this application, and because I wanted to add a little bit more context to the applicant's presentation. Back in October, while I was serving on the NENA board, this applicant contacted me after having committed the tragic act of uncertified tree removal, and based upon the blowback he was receiving online and from neighbors. He requested a conference call with me and then President Mark Baltus, which we granted. At that time, he explained that he was new to the area and renting a house in the North End. He'd begun preparing for the remodel of this home and was surprised to learn that he had needed prior approval by the city to remove the trees on their own lot. As was presented, he said he'd spoken with an arborist who said nothing was required by the city. He'd searched the city's website for tree removal info and saw nothing that required the certificate for the removal within the historic district. With him on the phone, I looked on the city's website and found his story to be accurate. The info was not contained within the tree section. However, it was layered more deeply within the historic section. The city has since taken actions to make this more clear, both by sending a letter to all residents in the historic districts with their December sewer bills. I know, I received one, and making it more clear and easy to find on the website. I recognize that this applicant performed an act that goes against the applicable historical guidelines for the area. In the past year, I've testified in opposition to 2 projects who performed unpermitted acts that were prohibited within the historic districts, including, and of what I would consider a more substantial violation in nature, the demolition of 2 contributing historic homes. I think it's important to draw a distinction between those 2 applicants and this one. At the hearings for both of those applications, as you probably remember, those applicants came before the commission arrogant and unapologetic for their actions. None of those parties showed much for remorse nor value for historic preservation, and neither of whom suggested remedies or mitigations to make up for their actions, and made no acknowledgement or attempt to clean up what they had done. They simply threw fits, lawyered up, and appealed after appealed. This applicant has behaved far differently. They've acknowledged their mistake. Yes, it was grand. They made countless efforts to meet and talk with neighbors, and they've offered solutions that the city has accepted to make up for the best that they can. While I too wish there were greater deterrents put forth by the city that would keep us from losing historic homes and old growth trees, we have yet to reach that point in our preservation path for this growing city. So I just want to reemphasize that while we have a situation like those of the past, unlike those of the past, this applicant has behaved differently and responded more responsibly. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Patazzo.
Next will be Derek Hurd.
Am I live?
You are. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Perfect. Great. My name is Derek Hurd, and I'm currently at 112 North 21st. No, that's not true. 1212 North 21st. And I just wanted to say quickly before that the link to testify publicly just became corrected and live, like as you were asking for public testimony. So there may be people that are trying to get in and just coming in that are just now finding the link as it spreads out on social media. So I just wanted to mention that so you know that there's still people maybe wanting to testify and come in. I'm a North End Neighborhood Association member since 1999, a past board member and past historic preservation representative for NENA. And just a couple quick comments. I believe this historic home is contributing and would have been classified as contributing if it were surveyed in the expanded North End survey. It is within your purview to reclassify homes that you believe to be classified incorrectly or have come into historic significance. It's happened before. I've watched it happen with my own eyes. I believe you should reclassify this as contributing. We have a limited stock of small and mid-sized homes, so every demolition is impactful to our neighborhood, whether it's contributing or not. This impacts the affordable housing stock and the demographics of our neighborhood. So I believe that home should be reclassified as contributing and not demolished. And not to leave a homeowner without solutions, I suggest that the applicant work with the city to save the existing home as an accessory dwelling unit in lieu of the 2-car garage. So they can still have their big home up front, and then they can have a ADU in the back, and everybody's happy except the trees, which, you know, here we are again with ignorance asking for forgiveness. And as Sherry Batazzo stated so eloquently, you know, it does get frustrating time after time after time after again when builders, applicants, homeowners come in, do something illegal, ask for forgiveness. That's frustrating. And then what's more frustrating is when they get away with it. We need to have fines. We need to have appropriate licenses suspended by contractors that are doing it, by tree services that are doing it, and make it too painful to be doing these illegal acts. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening. And I hope all the neighbors that are clicking on the wrong link can still get in and give their testimony tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd.
Mitzi will be up next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you just state your name and address for the record, please.
Mitzi Cieslak, 707 North 19th Street. This project is predicated solely on the non-contributory status of the home based on an improper survey. I won't belabor the already presented facts for the case for resurvey, which according to City Attorney Mary Grant is allowed by Boise City Code. There is clearly adequate evidence presented that the threshold for this has been met. The survey was done for the wrong historic district with distinctly different overriding goals and guidelines. It is out of date, inadequate, and incomplete. At minimum, the property must be resurveyed. Moreover, I believe the home and canal should be designated historic even without additional survey. At the February hearing, this property was aptly described by Commissioner Koski as iconic. Over the 25 years I have lived on this street, I have watched pedestrians stroll by this lovely property, stopping to admire the trees and canal with breadcrumbs in their pockets for the ducks. By law, the term historic property means any building, structure, area, or site that is significant in history, architecture, archaeology, or culture of this state its communities, or the nation. This home and canal are absolutely significant to the culture of this North End community. They are historic and should be afforded all due protection. When my home was annexed in 2004, I was not given a choice about whether I wanted to be assumed under the jurisdiction of the HPC with all its restrictions. Nonetheless, this was in pursuit of the greater goal of stewardship and preservation, and I accepted it gladly, believing that the historic charm and integrity of this neighborhood would be protected. On this block of 19th Street, we will all have significant changes already to the historic streetscape, with the companion property next door with its planned enormous 6,800 square foot remodel. And now the same applicant proposes further alteration in the appearance and feel of a street that has for generations remained essentially unchanged, removing trees, diverting the historic canal, and demolishing a 1939 home in pursuit of maximum lot coverage for a new home. As a resident of this block for a quarter of a century, I find this extremely distressing. The goals and guidelines of historic preservation in this district are clearly stated, and this project contravenes them in letter and spirit. According to the Boise Historic Preservation Plan, when the expanded North End was annexed in 2004, one of the driving forces was that many historic homes were being torn down to build larger homes that maximize lot coverage. Protection of these modest homes in the North End was deemed essential and reminds us all that the North End was generally developed as a working and middle-class neighborhood. These are our historic roots, and demolition of a quaint, modest 1939 home in favor of a large new home negatively impacts historic integrity. The goals and guidelines of historic preservation must be applied here, and this commission holds that stewardship.
That's time.
I urge you to afford this property the protection it deserves.
Thank you, Ms. Cieslak.
Naomi is next.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi there.
Hi. Please state your name and address.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address for the record. And you have
Am I unmuted?
We can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry, my volume was down.
No problem.
Okay, my name's Naomi Aiken. I live at 813 North 20th Street, directly on the intersection of 20th and Ada. My parents in 1978, when I was 6 months old, bought a home on 14th and Ada, and they continue to live in that home to this day. So I'm a lifelong North Ender. I have lived on 20th and Ada for 17 years. And like I said, my parents have lived in their home at 14th and Ada for 43 years now. My daughter and I have walked Ada Street every day, practically for the 14 years of her life, and enjoyed the property that is in dispute at this time. And as was mentioned by the other neighbor, we daily stopped with friends to enjoy the open space and the greenery that was presented on this property prior to the destruction of the trees. The property on 19th Street has been a gem to the neighborhood for my whole lifetime and for previous generations. I liken it to Elm Grove Park in Camel's-Back in terms of what that property has offered with open space and continues to offer with the current canal and the open space, even though the destruction of the 10 trees is heartbreaking, devastating, and I have not been able to pass by that property since the time the trees were destroyed. Like I said, my parents have owned their home for 43 years. I've owned mine for 17. We both purchased our homes prior to the North End becoming a historic district, and we've abided by the rules that were put in place, even though I did believe some homeowners like my parents should have been grandfathered in. My dad and my mom had a porch project denied because it didn't follow the rules laid out by the historic district. And for my own remodel, I had to work around an existing tree in the backyard that, had I removed, nobody in the neighborhood would have noticed, but I still abided by the rules that were laid out by the historic district. These new homeowners who have destroyed the trees and are planning to completely change the neighborhood knew the rules when they purchased their home. And I don't think that it is okay for new homeowners to come in and, as was stated by previous people who have been against this project, to break the rules and ask for forgiveness later. The loss of the open space that will be, the neighborhood will lose if the proposed home is built is as devastating as the destruction of the trees that have already been taken. The rerouting of the canal and the building of the home and the garage, even in the style of the existing homes, is not appropriate for this lot, which is in an area of the North End that does not have any open space, and it is quickly losing front yards and backyards to excessive remodeling of neighborhood homes. I agree with the gentleman who spoke about the neighborhood no longer having small homes for people to.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public wishing to testify this evening?
Sherry Edmond will be next.
Great.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. This is Sherry Edmond. I'm at 1419 North 13th Street. I am a NINA member and former board member. Most people have already stated my concerns with this project. I just have a couple of things to add. I know there's nothing we can do about the trees now, but it's even just looking at the slide. I've walked around this property a number of times, and looking at the slide is it's not just about the legality of the trees. It looks like they just deliberately cut down every single tree. It's even if you didn't know about permitting, it's hard to believe that you really believe in the character of the North End and you cut down all of the trees on your lot. It just seems, it just doesn't seem fitting to the neighborhood. My larger concern is about the survey. I'm still not clear on why this hasn't been resurveyed more recently. And I would agree, sorry, I have kids in the background. I would agree with prior neighbors who spoke that at a minimum, this needs to be resurveyed. If it's deemed a non-contributing structure at that time, then they would be welcome to move forward with their plans. But it needs to be resurveyed if it is contributing. We need to capture these errors when we find them. I feel that in a historic district, we can't move forward and say, oh, well, that already happened. Oh, well, the trees are already down. Oh, well, we missed the survey. Like, when we catch something as important as a survey, we should correct it at that time rather than looking back in the past and saying it was just a mistake. So sorry, this isn't very well. I just threw a couple notes together during testimony. So apologies if I was all over the place. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Edmond.
Austin will be next.
Thank you.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Austin Schmitz. I live at 805 North 19th Street. During the last meeting regarding the lot 17 North 19th Street, there were some comments and opinions that need to be addressed. We, as the public and the committee, need to remember what the roles and responsibilities are during these discussions. My family moved into North End in 1953, where my grandparents raised their children in the house that I reside in today at 805 North 19th Street. My father, who was raised in this house, now resides across the street where I was raised. We as a family never felt that the canal was a dangerous place for children. By moving the canal into the corner and creating a short, small bend could introduce possible catastrophic event if when we have another flash flood like we did back in year 1998 and 1979, respectively. It should be known that the owner of that lot could be held responsible for any water damage surrounding the lots if the canal is unable to pass the water throughout the property, respectively. One of the committee members last month mentioned Idaho State Code 67-4608. I'd like to remind the committee that this code should be familiar, as this code dictates on how the committee operates with any lot changes within the historical district. The rest of the paragraph of that code is as follows, and I believe Mitzi said it, so I'll save you the time. This committee should always strive for rehabilitation of any structure before demolition is even considered within the historical district boundaries. The historic district is slowly losing its distinctive character every time a new larger addition is added to a home, or when a modest house is demolished for a 2,500 square foot house. I request a new survey of the lot and the existing structures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah is next.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Sarah Wandling, and I live at 1605 North 22nd Street. And like Sherry said, I agree with many of my neighbors who have already spoken about the general disapproval of the neighbors and why we are sad that this could be moving forward. So I won't spend a lot of time rehashing all of that. But one of the things that I just want to point out is that, in my opinion, it's part of the point of a historic district to maintain the history of a neighborhood. And that's one of the reasons that I love living in the North End, is that there's so much character and you can walk from street to street and all the houses look different. This lot, like many have already spoken, truly is iconic. And when you walk by it, and it's just such a unique lot that if these changes move forward, this lot will look like any other lot with a new house on it in a new subdivision. And so I ask this commission to truly consider what the purpose of being a part of a historic district is, because we want to maintain the character of our neighborhood, and this lot in particular has so many different aspects of character that need to be maintained. Like others have said, unfortunately, the trees are already gone. So let's do what we can now to preserve what's left. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wandling.
Katie is next.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Katie Fight. I live at 1006 North 5th Street, Boise. I am a member of the NINA interim, or however one would classify it, historic committee, but these are my own words and my own thoughts on this matter. The commission's actions tonight are likely to set precedent. Depending on the deliberations and their outcome, a disastrous path for the protection of North End historical values may be set if this project is approved in the current form. The Garrity's bought this property well aware of the many constraints on building a large new house here. The constraints include a historic canal dating from 1866, running at a diagonal on grade through the property. As was stated earlier, the path of the canal shows up in the 1912 Sanborn maps. Presently, the site has a refreshing openness that helps offset the increasingly developed space all over the North End. And this openness is so important to carrying forward the historical values in the neighborhood. There's a charming little North End home that, with a new historical survey, may very well be found to be eligible for recognition, contributing to the historical character of the North End. And then we have the combination on this iconic lot in this neighborhood of the canal and the house, and both sort of interplay together. Rerouting the canal will alter the path from what certainly appears to be the historical area. It will change the nature of the lot. Demolishing the house will be a tragedy because all the smaller houses in the North End are being dismantled, either to be replaced with bigger houses, and or even the historical homes, as was discussed earlier, some that are supposed to have been left standing have been taken down by developers who then ask for, or owners who then ask for forgiveness and pay some small fine or whatever after the fact. I don't believe that the behavior, particularly of the property owner, should be a factor in your considerations. Asking for forgiveness after the fact and being apologetic, well, that's fine, but this is a blow to the neighborhood, what has happened here. And if you approve this project and allow the house to be demolished and the canal moved, it'll be an even bigger blow. So I ask you to request a resurvey of the historical values of the house.
Thank you, Ms. Veit. That's time.
Linda is next.
Hi, I'm Linda Whittake. I live at 1616 North 16th Street. I had written this letter to Ted and Cody, and unfortunately I was too late. So I would like to read my letter so that it is entered into this document. I am writing in opposition to the project at 717 North 19th Street. I understand that the buyers are from out of the area, and perhaps the guidelines and restrictions of living in a historic neighborhood weren't conveyed to them. While I'm compassionate to their situation, it doesn't change the rules, and the rules are what the Historic Preservation Commission is there to uphold. There's a couple trends that I find alarming and I feel like need to be checked before precedents are set that will make it impossible to enforce the regulations in the future. First is what seems to be an astonishing trend in doing things and asking permission later. There are only so many houses and characteristics that create our historic neighborhood. Each time we lose one, we lose a little bit of why we all love the North End. It's ironic that people choose this neighborhood for all its historic charm and then fight the very guidelines put in place to protect it. Second is that more and more people with the resources to do so just lawyer up to bully their way into getting what they want. And that's exactly what it is, bullying. The message is that if you have enough money, you are above the rules and can do whatever you want. Thirdly, I watch the meetings almost monthly, and I'm concerned with the efforts to influence commission members by playing the emotional card. Heartfelt stories of young couples with babies that just want to have their parents next door. This has absolutely nothing to do with the guidelines or the enforcement of them. These are the rules. The commission is there to enforce them. While it makes a great story to have grandparents grow up next door to the grandchildren, it should have no weight whatsoever in the decision-making process. It's important that the commission understand that we as a city are kind and considerate of these requests, but they shouldn't overrule the guidelines that are in place to protect this historic neighborhood we all love. Fourth, Carlos Cotto spoke on behalf of the North End Neighborhood Association, NENA, last month, but I do not believe that his comments were representational at all of how the neighborhood feels. I'm sure that you all are aware of that Cotto is currently one of the newly seated NENA members that was just voted to be recalled on March 18th. Specifically on the project on 19th, close to 12 mature trees were removed illegally. I understand that the homeowners were told they didn't need a permit for this, and I am sympathetic. But in the matter of rerouting the canal, if this illegal activity hadn't taken place, this wouldn't be a consideration, and then therefore, I feel like they should not be rewarded by allowing it to happen now. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Whittake. Do we have any other members willing to testify?
Madam Chair, the last hand raised is Lorinda.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Lorinda Williams. I reside at 2230 North 27th. I grew up on the corner, near the corner of 17th and Ada. And as a little girl, I used to walk with my leftover sandwich crusts to feed the ducks after school on this corner. It was always a very, very special place. I'm now 65. So this was 55 years ago when I was 9 years old. It was a place I went to nearly every day after school. I am concerned at what is happening will set a precedence that will allow other property owners to take out trees and then say, I'm sorry, I didn't know I need a permit. I returned to the North End in 2019 because the North End of Boise is where I had a sense of place growing up. The large tree canopies, the close-knit neighborhoods make this a special place. I feel that if we disregard the small home and the contribution that it makes, this was the neighborhood that was the first neighborhood in Boise. It was formerly farms. The canal predates all houses. And I request that a new survey be done. I remember when Mrs. White got the registration for the house next door. I was friends with her sons when I was a child. And it was always really special to see that brass plaque on that house. And I just feel it would be unjust for this to go forward. I do have sympathy for the property owners, but I think that house had someone living in it a year ago before Mrs. White passed away. And it's important that these small, humble homes be recognized for the value that they have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Do we have anyone else wanting to testify? Great. Okay. Are there any final questions for staff or the applicant before the applicant's rebuttal? Okay. If the applicant would like to come forward, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Chairman Montoto and Commissioners. Again, Jeff Bauer, 601 West Bannock. There's a lot to cover here, so I'm just going to run through it as fast as possible. As to Nina's comments, we couldn't agree more. This project hinges on Boise Canal Company's approval of this relocation, and it is a specific condition of approval in the existing certificate granted by Mr. Venegas. So if the canal company does not approve this relocation, this project is dead. Conditions of approval like this are commonplace, as you all know, and there's no reason that we can't move forward today with the strict condition of approval that the canal company finally approve this. And for the record, we are very close to a final design. They've approved our engineering. We're just waiting for a license and easement agreement. As to Mr. Klinger's comments, I think it's important to remember that in the context of non-contributing homes, under the city's certificate of appropriateness criteria, as to process, this is a staff level decision. So when a party comes to the city to demolish a non-contributing home, the hearing that we're having today isn't normal. Normally, Mr. Venegas makes that call on his own. That's the typical process. Again, to Mr. Klinger's point, our application is complete. We've submitted all required forms and documentation under the city code for certificate of appropriateness and based on the certificate of appropriateness application form. Ms. Battazzo, we agree with her comments. The applicant has gone out of their way to meet with neighbors, adjust our plan accordingly. Mr. Hurd's comments. I want to reiterate again, reclassification during a pending certificate of appropriateness is different than reclassification generally. We agree that the commission can reclassify property in the district with a separate hearing and a separate decision. But as to pending applications, we think it's improper to change the rules during the application. I think all the commissioners can understand, the fundamental fairness of changing such a significant status of the property at this point. As to Ms. Sislick's comments, There are no errors in the survey. Just because it's not as thorough as she or other folks would like doesn't mean there's any incorrect information in it. And I have not seen anyone come forward with any incorrect information in the survey. The home proposed is not large. The base square footage is 1,676 square feet. We meet all of the open space requirements. We exceed them, not by much, but we have 66% open space where I believe only 60 is required. As to Ms. Aiken's comments, we understand the emotional attachment to this property, and that's really why we want your approval tonight. The sooner we get approved, the sooner we can go forward with our tree mitigation plan, get those mature trees on site, relocate and improve the canal for her and her daughter to enjoy. Mr. Schmitz comments as to the canal. We have gone through significant engineering. We have vetted the angles with SPF engineers, and they specifically raised comments that we will be making the canal facility safer in many respects by improving the wall structure. The stacked rocks provide more structure, and we're also decreasing the slope of the facility by a few feet by making it longer. And again, it will be fenced. As to Ms. Fate's comment, this will not set any precedents. As the commission knows, each one of these certificates that comes before you, it's quasi-judicial, it stands on its own facts and merits, and you apply your criteria to each fact. No precedential value whatsoever. Many sections of this canal, this irrigation facility, are piped throughout the north end, as the commission knows, but we're proposing to leave our section open. Ms. Whittake's comments, we couldn't agree more. We are here tonight to follow the rules, and we believe that's incumbent upon the commission to follow those rules and apply the criteria. We aren't asking for any special favors based on families living next to each other. We just want the applicable 5 demolition and relocation criteria applied fairly. And lastly, as to Ms. Williams' comments, again, demolition of a non-contributing structure is staff level, and relocation of an in-ground irrigation facility is exempt under the matrix for certificate of appropriateness. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Are there any final questions for staff or the applicant? Okay, with that, I will close the public portion of the hearing, and I would like to hear a motion first, just so we can see where we're at. So at this point, I will consider a motion.
Madam Chair, and the commissioners, I'd like to start with a motion. I will move that for DRH 21-12, and which includes the 3 certificate of appropriatenesses that have been bundled together. I'd move for denial based on our guidelines as written on page 3 of our guidelines and Idaho law code 67-4608, which I can read verbatim for our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Commissioner Koski, if you'd like to go into detail on that, please.
Sure. And thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to read a paragraph or 2. I'll make it as quick as possible out of our guidelines just for the basis of my denial motion. It reads in our guidelines that the city's intent is to encourage high quality development while protecting the heritage of Boise's residential historic districts. The change brought on by alterations in new construction generally brings a wide range of considerations, such as protecting the integrity of the district, the sense of time and place conveyed by the property, including structures, yards, gardens, streets, sidewalks, planting strips, and open space as a collection. Under Idaho law, Idaho Code 67-4608 requires the commission to account for and limit the degree of change in exterior features in historic districts. These include architectural style, general design, and general arrangement of the exterior of a building or other structure, including the color, the kind, and the texture of building material types and styles of all windows, doors, light fixtures, signs, and other appurtenant fixtures and natural features such as trees and shrubbery. It goes on to say, state law provides that the commission may grant a certificate of appropriateness only when the applicant demonstrates that the proposed project shall not result in construction, reconstruction, alteration, restoration, moving, or demolition of buildings, structures, appurtenant fixtures, outdoor advertising signs, or natural features in the historic district, which would be incongruous with the historical, architectural, archaeological, or cultural aspects of the district. Those were the readings out of our guidelines that we need to consider as commissioners, and one that I'm considering greatly because I believe the canal and is a significant part and a contributing part to the property and is addressed in those guidelines that are written. The other thing that I want to mention is the tree removal is kind of the instigating part of this whole thing. We can't assume what would have been the case if they would apply 100%, but if they had applied for tree removal with the city of trees, without the trees being a threat to structures or the neighborhood or being unhealthy, they would have not been allowed to be removed. If they weren't removed, you couldn't move the canal there. So I feel that both of those items are contribute greatly to my motion for denial. I would suggest to the applicant that if this denial would go through, that as far as the house goes, and they're willing to work with the neighbors as they state, I think they should get it surveyed themselves. If they feel that it's not a contributing house and you want to show the neighbors that, why don't you get it surveyed? I think that would be a great move. And if it comes as non-contributing, then they can address that with a different application to build a house on the property as is. Thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Koski. Is there any further discussion before we go ahead and vote on that motion? Okay, let's go ahead and call the vote. Victoria, will you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Nay.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Nay.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Pape,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Nay.
Motion carries 5 in favor, 3 opposed.
Okay. Thank you all for your patience. That was a long one. We're going to move back to item number 1, which is DRH 20-00543, Luke Caldwell at 1714 North 26th Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This item is a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a single-family structure and detached garage on a substandard lot in the expanded north end. The property is considered non-contributing. This is the substandard lot, an aerial view of it. And this is the site plan for the property. As I explained the first time we went through this, the property generally meets setback requirements, except for probably the front setback. It appears, though reduced setbacks are allowed for substandard lots, it appears that this property won't be able to comply with our substandard lot ordinance for a front setback due to the extensive setback to the property on the north. So a 15-foot setback would be required, front setback would be required for the property or for the house. And then the garage in the back is a single vehicle garage with just to the south, we'll have a paved pad for uncovered parking, so it will comply with the 2 parking spots for the required 2 parking spots for a single family property. These are the elevations. The left is the front elevation. And then the right is the rear elevation. So you can see it has a full front porch, some large windows, and the door on the right. And then an elevated daylight basement. And then these are the side elevations. And then the single car garage. These are some photos of the property. So again, this is a substandard 25-foot wide lot, which is a legal lot in the city to build on. That being said, it does have constraints due to the limited width. So the house is going to be somewhat narrow, required to meet those 5-foot side setbacks. So really, without a variance, the maximum width on these kind of lots is 15 feet. But staff does recommend approval of DRH 2543 with the conditions of approval in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. And again, commissioners, for the sake of time, we're going to hold questions until after the applicant has presented. Is the applicant present?
Hello, Luke here.
Hi, please state your name and address for the record. You have 20 minutes.
Luke Caldwell, 5317 Wiley Lane, Boise, Idaho. And basically, hey, Ted, thanks so much for doing that twice. Sorry I couldn't get on earlier. This is a undeveloped lot on 1714 North 26th Street. And I would like to build a single family home here on this lot and definitely want to do it to code. And I read through the conditions of approval, the 8 conditions, and I 100% agree with the staff's recommendations on what to do. And I'm totally in accordance with all of them to perform those. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. At this point, are there any questions for the applicant or staff? From the commission, sorry. We'll get to public testimony just shortly.
Madam Chair, I have a question for the applicant.
Sure, Commissioner Koski.
I just want to address the question on the front setback. Are you saying you're in agreement of moving it back to meet the 15 feet requirement for the front setback?
So if that's what we have to do, I'm happy to do it. I was hoping to get it at 10, but if I have to adjust the house to figure it out, or the garage, I'm willing to do that. What makes it difficult is that the house on 1718, which I own as well, which is contributing, therefore it can't be moved forward, is extremely set back. I measured it, and it's roughly I think 58 feet from the actual road, and so it's way back there. And so I understand why you're asking to kind of meet in the middle somewhere, and obviously 10 would be the shortest amount, and 15 seems reasonable. So yes.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Any final questions? Okay. Is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify on this item?
Hi, good evening again. This is Kate Henwood, 1116 North 12th. Thank you. I have a brief comment. Nina does not support this project as it has been presented. The 1.5 story design conflicts with the at-grade design of the nearby houses. If the house was lowered to grade, it would fit the streetscape more harmoniously. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henwood. Is there any member of the public tonight wishing to testify on this item? We have one individual in-house, so we'll go ahead and start with you. If you'd like to come forward, please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Parker Bloom, and I live at the residence of 1706 North 26th Street, which is the house right next door to the proposed building of a new home. I don't feel that that fits the quality of the historic North End and the quaintness that we have. I do feel that we're slowly losing that, and it's a sad thing. As you walk around the North End, you're seeing it all over. I moved to Boise and purchased this house in 1987. I've lived in that home the entire time, and what I've seen in the recent years is we are losing our quality of life in the Boise North End. This does not fit the historic North End. It's actually will be higher than a ranch house because it'll be 1.5 stories. To me, it feels like as if Starbucks is moving into the North End and pushing out the little coffee shop, which we all love. And the reason I still live in the North End is because of what it was. And I hate to see it disappear. I just hope that everybody considers what we have in Boise and what we have in the North End. And it's very sad to see it slowly disappear. The quality of life that we've so much enjoyed for 30+ years in Boise, Idaho, and the North End. That house, as you see, if you pull up one of those pictures, will be sitting right next to the house that's currently there. It will be 5 feet off of my fence line, but that house looks as if it sits right next to, and that is not 5 feet off of the house sitting to the north of it. I know he owns both lots, but I think you could do much better with that property than just trying to jam one more house into the North End. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify this evening? It doesn't appear so. So with that, we'll go back to the applicant. You have 5 minutes for rebuttal if you would like.
Yeah, that would be great. Parker, I totally understand your concerns of growing up, being there in the North End. I grew up on 23rd Street, and actually my first house that I purchased when I was 21 was literally 1.5 blocks away from the house that I'm proposing to construct on 26th and Hazel. And I absolutely love the neighborhood. I am passionate about it. I grew up in the North End, and I would love to build a home that I truly do feel fits the neighborhood. And yes, it is a substandard lot. It's a skinny lot. I am not a big fan of skinny homes personally myself. But as you know, we are in a city where the historic district is kind of plays a factor in that. The house that's next door is part of the historic district. And so I have a lot that's not being used. And as we all know, there are plenty of people looking for property to be able to live in, to rent here in our city, close to downtown. I think that's going to provide that. And I will build a home that is quality, that is using everything up to standard for the historic district. I want this home to fit the neighborhood. And there are 2-story homes across the way, and many of the architecture all throughout the North End has a lot of different variation. But my goal will be to use high quality materials and to really make it feel like it's quaint and it fits the neighborhood. And I feel like with my experience, I'm really going to be able to do that and make it a great home for a family to be able to enjoy the North End just as you are.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Are there any final questions for the applicant or staff?
Madam Chair, I do have a question for Mr. Caldwell.
Please.
I'm looking at your plans, and I guess I was, until the last person spoke, I was a little confused. There's a line on your plans which seems to represent grade, but now that I look at it, I'm confused at how high the house actually is above the ground. Can you clarify that for me? Is it about 18 feet above grade that the top of the roof sits?
So basically, the basement where usually you would dig out 8 feet, we're going to be digging out 4 instead, so that it's more of a daylight basement, and that's why it will become a 1.5 instead of a 1 story. So that obviously it's not a tall double 2-story skinny home, but will be actually in accordance to what you guys require.
If I do the math right, do you know what the dimension is? Is that about 18 feet? And then the other question is, do you know what the house, your other house that you own that's next door, the other small house, how that is?
How tall that is? I don't know what the height of that is off the top of my head. And I am looking at my notes right here on the height of the actual height here. It says height to eave is 14, height to midline is 18, and height to peak is 21.
Okay.
Which all is up to code.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just think, and maybe staff understood, I just think the drawings have some confusing lines and dimensions on them that makes it difficult to understand. But thank you.
Are there any final questions for the applicant or staff? Okay, thank you, Mr. Caldwell.
Thanks.
With that, I will close the public portion of the hearing and we'll consider a motion. I think just for the sake of time this evening, I'll entertain a motion first, and then if there's any discussion, we can follow up.
Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and start. I move that we approve DRH 20-00543 with staff's recommendations for approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Weaver. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay, Victoria, will you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Ape,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Pintai.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Oh, yes.
I believe we have received request from at least one commissioner for a 5-minute break.
Oh, sure.
Is that okay?
I think that's great. Let's break for 5 minutes and return at 7:55. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
They're so hard.
Doing a master's. My name is Jerry Porter. I work for Dr. Porter.
Do we have everyone back on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. We're going to go ahead and reconvene. And we're going to move on to item number 3. This is DRH 21-00061, Amanda Swales at 1412 North 8th Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a certificate of appropriateness request to reconstruct the front porch that was traditionally on the front of this house. The property is located in the North End Historic District and is a contributing structure. So this is an aerial of the property, generally as it exists today. And that is a photo of the facade. So currently it has this stoop entry with the eaves matching the roof. And so the porch, again, this project is just to reconstruct the porch that was at one time on this structure. So you can see the shaded areas where the porch will be added back on. And there's an elevation showing the porch. And then some profiles showing the porch from a side. And then these are some surveys from 1912, 1949, and 1956. Or sorry, not surveys, Sanborn fire maps, showing the porch to be on the structure through the period of significance and through 1956. So it's apparent that the porch was removed sometime after 1956 and after the period of significance. And you'll see these photos in the staff report. I just brought up some photographs of other houses that are considered national or pyramid style houses, and the front, generally what the front porch looks like on these structures for your reference. And these were pulled out of the Field Guide to American Houses. So with this, staff recommends approval of DRH 2161 with the conditions of approval listed in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant present?
Hello, can you hear me?
You can. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
Okay, my name is Amanda Swales, and my address is 4505 West Bethel Street in Boise, and I'm the residential designer for this project. And I want to thank the commission for reviewing this certificate of appropriate application. And thank you, Ted, for sort of describing the project itself. My client's desire is to build a nice front porch that looks like it had always been there. The plan is to remove that concrete stoop that was put in sometime after 1956, we are unsure, and replace it with a wood porch of the same footprint. Unfortunately, we don't have any photos of the original house. We believe it was built in 1903 or 1905 because there was evidence on the Sanborn maps. The front stoop itself, again, or not the front stoop, but the front porch itself is very basic. The house itself is a national kind of folk style with a pyramid roof, and it has like a slight 2x2 flare on the edges, which we are mimicking with the new front porch. It all tucks under the existing roof, so therefore we're not touching the existing house, no real changes there. The materials are all going to be wood. There might be some pressure treated structure, but everything will be wrapped in real wood, painted probably a white because that's sort of the trim color of the house as it is right now. We do agree with the conditions of approval. We are starting the variance process because the existing house itself is already out of compliance with the 20-foot setback just because it was built before that setback was put into place. I can go into that more if you guys have questions about it. For the sake of time, I won't go into much more. If you have questions about materials or anything else, please ask.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Swales.
Thanks.
Is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify this evening?
Hello, Kate Henwood again. Do you need my address each time I speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, 1116 North 12th Street. And my comments are brief. Just wanted to say that Nina enthusiastically supports this application. We think reinstalling a front porch will add pleasantly to the streetscape on this block. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henwood. Are there any members of the public wishing to testify this evening? It doesn't appear we have anyone in person or online. So with that, are there any final questions for staff or the applicant?
Madam Chair, I have a question for staff.
Sure, Commissioner Koski.
Hey, Ted, in previous examples, at least in the tenure that I've been here on the commission, we have not been approving or at all of this type of application, just putting on a porch without any historical photos. Obviously, based on the Sanborn maps and other projects we see throughout these historic districts, porches were definitely a part of that, the homes of that time. And I know a number of them have now been enclosed or are gone. So I get that, but without photos, we haven't been approving them. Is there something more we need to consider here that I'm unaware of, or what's our stance on that from staff's perspective?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Koski, we we don't get too many of these. We have had a few, I guess, as growth and new people have moved into the north end. A couple of these over the last year or two. In the past, I would say when the first couple of years I was doing this work, there were a few of these that were getting approved by the commission. And generally the idea was that, if you could show if the porch was removed after the period of significance, so the removal of the porch wasn't considered a historic, a new historic component of that house, but it was removed at some later date outside of the period of significance, then it is, I would say, rare for us to have a photo of a house that actually shows what the original porch looked like. And so generally we do try to go back and look at, so we take the style of the house as we did in this instance and look at what those porches might have looked like on similar styled houses. This one seemed to generally be appropriate in looking at the field guide to American House examples that were in there. And so we felt comfortable adding this back on. But then again, going back, if we had seen that the porch had been removed during the period of significance, then the removal of the porch and the addition of that stoop would have become itself a part of the historic structure. But because it was removed sometime after, we just, the commission in the past has traditionally considered it appropriate to try to reconstruct that historic front porch using examples from similar styled homes.
And another question I have then, Madam Chair and Ted, is when the historical survey was done on this property, was the stoop, the existing stoop and door part of that survey?
I believe it was. I'll have to go back and look at the survey. It should be in your packet, I believe. So there's not a very good photo of the house that is part of the survey, and it does look like that stoop is on the front. When the survey was completed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If the applicant would like, you have 5 additional minutes.
I did have one question about the conditions of approval.
Oh, sure.
And it was talking about the porch materials, including posts, floor, trim, skirting, should all be natural wood. And does that exclude using Trex decking, a wood look sort of Trex decking for the flooring?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Trex decking is generally considered inappropriate for the front porch or front of a house. It's okay generally for like a rear porch or a less visible area, but on a front porch, we do typically require all natural wood for wood materials on the porch.
Perfect.
Of course, the commission can obviously override that if they see fit.
We were concerned about durability.
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, we were just concerned about durability and weathering. So it's posing the question.
Does that answer your question?
So it would need to be a natural wood, probably a stained natural wood or painted natural wood floor.
Madam Chair, that's correct. It would need to be a natural, real wood.
Thank you, Ted.
Okay, that works.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Swales. And with that, I will close the public portion of the hearing and we'll consider a motion.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Maroney.
I move to approve DRH 2161 with staff's conditions of approval.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Oh, I had Commissioner Brown second that first. Okay, Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Madam Chair, I have some discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Koski, please.
It's okay. I just like to make a comment, I guess, for the rest of the commissioners that when a survey is done, it takes in consideration alterations that have been done. And as an historic property, it took in consideration the changes to the existing or would show the existing front stoop and entry on it, considered that being considered contributing. And we're talking about removing that and putting an old port, trying to recreate a porch that we don't have a photo of. I actually like the idea, but I'm struggling with creating the design without any actual basis for it, just basing it on designs of the time, not actual photos of the actual house. So for that reason, I'm struggling. I'm going to vote to deny, but I do applaud their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Koski. Is there any other discussion before we vote on this matter?
Madam Chair, I'll just address that really quick. In the past, all of the porches that I recall that have been not approved have not actually had access to the Sanborn map. So we haven't, although we think that there might be something there, and I may be wrong, but this is just what I recall. While we think that there might have been a porch or something in front of the house, we don't have any proof of that. So we haven't, it's harder to approve it. But since we can clearly see on all these maps that it was there, that and the size of it, the approximate size of it, that it, you know, I feel like it's a lot easier to approve this one. And also just based on the fact that we know the style of the house and the style of a typical porch for it, that it makes it also easier to approve. And I suspect that potentially why it was approved when they did the survey is that the porch is something that could just be removed from the house pretty easily and still keep the character of the house, even if the porch was rebuilt. So they maybe weren't concerned about the fact that the porch was on there and wasn't.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Weaver.
Thank you, Commissioner Weaver, and Madam Chair. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Pape,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. On to our next item this evening. Item number 4, DRH 21-00072, Scott Rebar at 1702 West Riddenbaugh Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This is a certificate appropriateness request to construct an addition, a basement, reconstruct the historic wraparound porch, change the primary orientation to 17th Street, add a new door, replace windows, and add solar panels. And the siding will be removed and reinstalled for insulation. This is in the expanded North End Historic District, and the property is considered contributing. So this is a aerial of the house. So this is the garage off of the alley, and the house, again, sort of a national style pyramidal roof. The house is oriented toward Reidenbaugh. So part of the request is to reorient the house to 17th Street. This is an addition that was put on later, and so that would also be removed, and a new addition wrapping around the back and the side, and then the wraparound porch. So again, one of the key components is changing that orientation from Reidenbaugh to 17th Street. These are photos of the house as it generally appears today. So this is that front south elevation. And if you'll read the notes, there's a report that Carrie Davis did on this property, and she calls this an essentially an inappropriate covering on the south elevation. So non-historic, non-stylistic with the style of the home. So there's an existing site plan on the left, and then a proposed site plan on the right. So again, as I described, it currently faces south with an addition on the back, a patio. So here's what will, or it is proposed to occur, is a new addition will be added back in this area, the old addition removed. Some new windows will be put back in to the house as well. This is the wraparound porch that's being proposed here. And then the proposal for the house to actually front out towards 17th Street instead of south toward Reidenbach. So as you'll read through Carrie Davis's report, she did a pretty extensive analysis on this property. It seems clear in looking at the Sanborn maps that the primary entrance to the structure was traditionally to the south. But in Carrie's report, she insinuates that the main entrance may have changed a couple of times over time, and that the entrance to 17th Street may have at one time been a primary entrance to the structure. And so it could be appropriate to change that main entrance. It would align the property more naturally with the neighboring properties as well, with the alley to the rear rather than to the side. And it would be consistent with some of the adjacent lots. Here are some elevations. So down here, you'll see the south elevation, which is existing, and then the south elevation here, which was proposed with the porch. You'll note that staff did have a condition of approval that the porch actually, if the porch is going to be approved in this case, that it appears from the Sanborn maps, which I believe I have in this presentation, that the porch does extend all the way to the wall. And so staff is recommending that the porch actually be extended. If it's going to be replaced, it should try to match that footprint as close as possible. You'll see solar panels here. In the historic districts, we generally do not want to see solar panels on a street facade, so there is a condition of approval that the solar panels not be placed on that street facade. Whether the orientation is changed or not, it shouldn't be on the front or a street-facing area. They can be back here on that side roof elevation. You'll see the east-facing elevation, this is the current east-facing elevation. And this is what it'll look like if the project is approved, and the main entrance would then occur here. This is facing 17th Street. And here is the addition. This is the old addition, and then a new addition with a roof will be placed here. And then these are other elevations on the house. Staff does have a condition of approval that this is the west elevation, so this is the interior elevation. However, it is somewhat visible because the lot is quite large. So staff has a recommendation of approval that these windows remain. These are right up front towards the front of the house and would seem to be quite visible, and staff believes that these would have an adverse effect on the contributing house. So there is a recommendation that the double hung window remain in that location. The rest of these could be considered okay toward the back and under the awning. Again, here are some Sanborn maps, as you can see from 1912, 1949, that there was a wraparound porch on the structure. And then sometime between 1949 and 1956, that was removed. So 1949 is generally the top end of our period of significance. So up to after 1949 and up through 1956, for this historic district is generally, this would be considered generally outside the period of significance for the district. So again, similar to the previous house, we might consider that that porch was removed outside of the period of significance. And again, some photos. And this is a two-story version of the National and Pyramidal house. I didn't see any wraparound porches in the book, in the field guide of American houses, but I did find these. Again, you've seen a couple of these already. Fairly modest hip style porches on the structure. Again, nothing that shows a wraparound, but you can get the idea of what the porch might look like. There are some concerns. Generally, in the past, the commission has, when there's a street-facing facade, the front of the house, the staff or the commission generally wants to see that an addition stepped back. In the past, the commission has said a minimum of 10 feet is good. Anything closer to 10 feet to that front facade could impact adversely impact the contributing house. So you'll note this is the proposed site plan. So I believe the addition, though it is just a one-story addition, so it's fairly modest. So it's not like a two-story addition. It's not overwhelming, but it is only set back 6 feet. So staff does have a condition of approval in there that I think that the applicant would like to talk to you about. And they would like, if the reorientation is approved on the house, the applicants would like to keep that 6 foot setback. So that staff condition, if this is approved, would need to, be removed. It would need to be stricken. So we talked about the extent of the porch on that south elevation, that it should wrap all the way to the edge to be consistent with the footprint on the fire maps. I talked about the solar panels on the south roof elevation. They should not be on a street-facing roof elevation. They should be on an interior or back elevation. And then I also talked about that window change on that west elevation, that we would like to have that part of it. It's so close to the front of the house on a large lot that we'd like to see that remain as a single or double hung window. So with that, staff does recommend approval of the application with the conditions of approval listed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant present?
Yes, I'm here. This is Scott Weibar.
Hi, please state your address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
Yeah, Scott Weibar, 442 West Thatcher Street in Boise, and I'm the architect on the project. Thank you, members of the commission, for considering our proposal. Thank you, Ted, also for explaining everything so far. I'm going to add just a little bit more to that explanation. So the project consists of a deep energy retrofit to the passive house standards of an existing two-story historic single-family residence. So under this proposal, an existing non-historic addition will be removed and replaced with a new 650 square foot single-story addition. A new basement will be added under both the existing and new portions of the structure, and a non-original porch added in 1996 will be removed, and the original wraparound porch will be restored. An entry door will be restored on the 17th Street side of the house. And we have evidence of that there was that door on the 17th Street side. And we are proposing to change the address, as Ted stated, from Reidenbach Street to 17th Street. The existing entry door on 17th Street will remain, however. All existing non-original windows will be replaced with new aluminum-clad wood windows, and the original wood siding will be temporarily removed to allow for the installation of exterior insulation and then reinstalled. New wood siding to match the original profile will be installed on the proposed addition. So the project has two major goals, and the first is to improve the livability of the interior of the house. This will be done by reconfiguring existing spaces and adding additional living space. The new space added on the first floor will allow for a new master suite that will meet the owner's aging in place requirements. Along with the interior renovation, the owners are committed to restoring the exterior character of the home as closely as possible to the original. The second goal is a deep energy retrofit that will significantly reduce the building's carbon footprint while improving interior comfort and air quality. To meet this goal, the project is proposing a building envelope and mechanical system updates to meet the FIAS Plus Passive House Energy Efficiency Standard. A home that achieves Passive House certification drastically reduces its energy use intensity compared to an existing home and will allow the home to achieve source net zero status with the addition of a renewable energy system. So I'm going to talk just a little bit more about the Sanborn maps. So the Sanborn maps indicate that the primary orientation of the house has been to the south, but historical records show that the property has had at least 5 different addresses, several of which were on 17th Street. As Ted noted, Carrie Davis pointed out in her inventory form that the address varied by elevation many times, suggesting the primary elevation was variously perceived as 17th Street and West Reidenbach Street, depending on the owner, design, porch location, and so forth. The original architectural style of the house remains unconfirmed. The original wraparound porch was demolished about 1951, leaving a simple unadorned form most similar to the pyramidal subtype of the National Folk House category. The established massing and orientation of the building is ambiguous, as the footprint is nearly square. As mentioned in the updated inventory form, with the loss of the wraparound porch and various other modifications over its 120-year history, the house has lost its integrity of design. Its integrity of feeling has also been compromised by the loss of original design features, as well as hindered integrity of materiality and workmanship. It is the opinion of the project team that the restoration of the original wraparound porch and removal of the non-original addition will greatly improve the architectural and historic integrity of the house. The proposed addition will be a single story to soften the transition from the 2-story main house to the neighboring house on the north. In this way, the visual continuity and modest scale of the block face to the north are maintained. The addition will incorporate the same architectural characteristics, so a hip roof, the same materiality and trim details, and will be set back from the original house about 5 feet and 13 feet from the front of the proposed porch. And as can be seen in the 3D images, the proposed addition clearly reads as subordinate to the original house in terms of massing and setback from the east elevation. The project proposes the restoration of an existing entry door on the 17th Street, that is the east elevation, to be used as the primary entry door. And we're proposing this because the current layout of the first floor is very awkward. The entry door opens directly into the dining room. The design solution that we worked through proposes here, it proposes a far superior first floor layout by allowing for a dedicated entry space that buffers the entry door from other living spaces. Entry storage space can also now be provided, and the circulation is improved to the rest of the house, and furniture in the dining room can be more comfortably arranged. So although the Sanborn maps indicate the house was oriented to the south, there is no evidence that there was a dominant architectural element that indicated the building's orientation. The existence of 2 entry doors and multiple addresses over the years indicate that the original design of the house lacked an integral component that architecturally defined its orientation and left it open to interpretation by the occupants. The south and east elevations are nearly identical in size, and the 2/2 layout of the window door openings is identical on both. The original wraparound porch also does not provide evidence of a primary architectural facade because it is present on both the south and east elevations and would not provide a visual cue. Both the current entry door and the demolished entry door on the east are simple rectangular openings and offer no further indication of a primary facade defining feature. Several attempts over the years have been made to mark the door on the south as the primary entry, including the current porch that was built in 1996. But none of these were original and could not have coexisted with the original wraparound porch. The project team believes the current proposal is in keeping with the Secretary of the Interior standard for rehabilitation for entrances and porches because it proposes to replace the historic porch and an original entrance. While no drawings or plans exist for the original porch, we believe the new design is compatible with the historic character of the building and is compatible in size, scale, and material with the original. The original south entry door, along with its sense of connection to the south side of the property, will remain. We believe the resulting architectural solution will greatly benefit the quality and usability of the interior space, while simultaneously connecting the building to both 17th Street and Reidenbach Street. We believe the proposed project will contribute to the surrounding neighborhood by restoring a historic building closer to its original state, while at the same time creating a beautiful updated family home. We salute the owner's desire to incorporate a high level of energy efficiency and believe that this project could serve as a valuable precedent for other projects in Boise's historic North End. Thank you in advance for your consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Please.
Scott, have you ran calculations on what kind of energy will be provided by having the panels on the south side at all, out of curiosity?
Yeah, we were initially thinking that we're going to need about a 12 kW system. So our first, and what's not shown here, and I should have had that on our plans, but we're going to first put the panels on the garage. So the next place we basically have left are the house west and south facades. So the hip roof makes it a little bit hard to fit a lot of panels. So if the orientation could be changed, we thought that the south would be our best generating facade anyway. The south would be sort of a secondary facade at that point. So that's why we did propose them on the street facing south side. Otherwise, we're just left with the west, which is not ideal on the house. So that's why we did that. And the size of the system, it's going to be possibly hard to fit them just on the garage and that west side.
Good. Thank you.
Any final questions before we move on? Okay. Is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify?
Hi there, Kate Henwood again, 1116 North 12th Street. Nina appreciates the research and thoughtfulness behind this project. We support the staff recommendation for approval.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public wishing to testify this evening? It doesn't appear we have anyone. So, if the applicant would like, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Yeah, I think the two things that I would like to ask about, the first being the condition of setting back the addition from the facade 10 feet. And so we consciously set that addition back from the front facade. We were not aware that there was a specific dimension for that. I believe that so we're about 5 feet or so away from that front, that it's the east facade. Plus we have the extra sort of mass or feeling of depth created from that porch. So I would just like to ask if it would be acceptable to keep that dimension as shown. It will make it very difficult for us to organize the interior plan to fix that. Basically, we have some programmatic stuff that has to happen, and we just really can't fit it all back there if we have to adjust it. So just not knowing that specific dimension, if we had known, we probably could have maybe redone something, but we are actually, believe it or not, kind of limited where we can do the addition. So if it were possible to, take the general way that massing of that small addition is subordinate to the main house without needing it to be specifically 10 feet, I think that would really help our proposal. And the other thing I would say would just be an explanation for the reason that the porch does not extend all the way across the south facade. And we did that for 2 reasons. One was that the roof would cover that one window, and it helps in meeting the passive house certification. It helps that we have more windows that bring in solar gains in the winter instead of shading that window actually on the south side. So if you can, thanks. The south window that's not covered, so where the porch does not extend, actually on the proposed south elevation. So we did that. So that part of that was keeping that window available for solar gains that helps give us heat energy in the winter. And the second reason is that if we bring that porch all the way across there, we don't want to give a confusing entry sequence. So the stairs, actually, we can still have that connection to the front, to the Reidenbaugh Street side with a small path, but people won't confuse that as the primary entry. If we do bring the porch across, we either have to have access sort of into the backyard, or it has to come directly out onto Reidenbaugh. And so I feel that it's a better solution to hold that porch back so that we can keep that connection without it being confused as a primary entrance. But the door, the original door and everything is still there. And so that's if that condition were also acceptable to keep the porch as proposed, that would be ideal. But we would accept to move the porch roof all the way across the facade if necessary. And I think that's all that we have.
Thank you so much. Okay, and with that, I will go ahead and close the public portion of the hearing, and we'll consider a motion.
Madam Chair, can we just have a little bit of discussion about the variances that they have in question first? Is that okay?
Sure. Tonight we've kind of been going motion to then discussion, but I'm happy to entertain that.
I think it'll maybe make our motions better and get us through quicker if we can kind of plow through some of this first. I just first wanted to address the setback that would be on the east side, that 10-foot one. In our guidelines 4.1.2, it specifically addresses the addition setback. And it says setback a new addition from the primary facade of the original building to maintain an original proportion, massing, size, and scale. For example, setting back a wall plane a few inches. And so basically what it's getting at is it just wants to make sure that there's like a difference between the facade and the addition, right? And so I think that given we don't have the wording that it needs to be a specific 10 feet and they are putting on that porch and that the addition is 1 story instead of 2, I think that it's fine the way it is.
Thank you, Commissioner Maroney.
Madam Chair, just a point of clarification. That section of the guidelines, I think, has been poorly written. In the past, the commission has considered the wall plane, that to be kind of a side wall plane breakup, where it's just a couple of inches, where you can have, where you might have a side wall plane and then you do an addition. and you want to kick it in a couple additions, you want to differentiate the wall plane and not just have a straight wall plane go all the way back.
Right.
The wording of that has tripped up a lot of people. I don't think, we generally have wanted to see an addition come all the way up to the front of a facade, just a couple of inches back. I just wanted to make that clear, just based on past precedent and how we've interpreted that section of the guidelines.
Thank you, Ted. That's very helpful. Is there any additional discussion? Or perhaps a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to help continue our discussion.
Thank you.
I would like to move for DRH 21-72 for approval based on staff report and the conditions in it.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Oh, I had Commissioner Kintai second that first. Is there any additional discussion before we vote?
Madam Chair, I agree with Commissioner Maroney that because that addition it's set back, but it's also a lot shorter than the rest of the house. I feel like it's not, if it had been the full two stories like the rest of the house, I think it would have needed to be set back more, but because of its diminished size to the rest of the house, I would agree that it's fine and it fits our guidelines.
Thank you, Commissioner Weaver. Victoria, go ahead and call the vote.
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
No.
Weaver,
No.
Brown,
No.
Pape,
No.
Montoto,
No.
Kintai.
Aye.
Motion fails, 5 opposed, 3 in favor.
Does someone want to make a new motion? Or perhaps one of the nay voters discuss why?
Commissioners, so I think we should approve based on the two comments that we had previously with keeping the setback as proposed. If we're really concerned about it, another way to kind of fix that problem is to use different either materials or different width in its siding so that it's not seamless from the original house to the addition. So maybe that's up for discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Would anyone like to make a new motion?
Madam Chair, I'll attempt. I move to approve DRH 2172 with all of the staff conditions, with the exception of the addition setback can stay as it's currently drawn in their plans.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I would second.
Thank you. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
I can support that, so aye.
Koski,
Nay.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye. Did you say me?
Yes.
Sorry. I didn't hear you. Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
Motion carries 7 in favor, 1 opposed.
Thank you. Next on tonight's agenda is item number 5, DRH 21-00075, Richard Wilmot at 1213 North 5th Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As it's getting late, I'll try to speed up my presentation a little bit so we can get to. So this is a certificate of appropriateness for a new house and a garage in the North End Historic District, non-contributing property. This was a house that the commission approved to demolish about 2 years ago. And there were approved plans with that, but the property sold and there are new plans. So this is the property here. It is a standard sized lot fronting 5th Street. This is the site plan. The property will meet setbacks. This is the house and proposed garage taking access off of the alley. And these are the front and rear elevations. As you'll see in the staff report, staff does have a condition that the peak height be reduced. This is a block of mostly 1 and 1.5 story houses. This is proposed to be 32 feet at peak, so staff believes it could be overwhelming for the block. And we have a condition that it be reduced down to 28 feet, which would still be a large house, but it would appear less massive. The applicant has taken used a design to break up some of the massing as well. So we believe with that reduction in height that it could be an acceptable structure. And these are the side elevations. Going back to the site plan, you'll also note that another issue is the lot coverage, which is at 39%. The applicant claim has which he can explain to you, but there is a large covered patio in the back that if that cover is removed off the patio, it could get the project down just under 35, I believe. And these are just some photos of the adjacent houses. As you can see, this is about a maybe 1.5 story, and then a 1.5 to a partial 2 story to the north. And these are some houses throughout the neighborhood. As you can see, they're all 1 to 1.5 story structures, fairly modest. These are the concerns that I mentioned. So we do have a condition to reduce it to 28 feet to peak and to get to 35%, no higher than 35%. And with those conditions, we could recommend approval of this project.
Thank you, Ted. Is the applicant present?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 20 minutes.
Richard Wilmot, Chrysalis Architecture and Planning. Address is 3914 East Presidential Drive, Meridian, Idaho. Commissioners, thank you for the time this evening. I'll try to make this brief. We're proposing as Ted mentioned, a new single-family residential project with a detached garage. Our current proposal is such that we have a main level and a basement level, with a covered front porch and a covered rear porch. We understand that the rear porch puts us over the lot coverage that is desired at 35%, and we would be at 34.7% if we were to make that portion of the project uncovered. Ideally, because of the connection to the main great room of the house, the central space, the central living area, it would be nice to be able to have the ability to provide access to a covered space outdoors via the rear porch. But if that becomes a reason for denial, then we can certainly reconsider and do an uncovered porch back there. However, the roof slope, we've taken fairly great care in terms of providing variation of design and roof slope and massing of the project to be fairly compatible with what we see as the traditional style of this home, being sort of a craftsman type architectural style. So what we have on the front facade, Ted, can I share my screen?
Yeah, Josh will give you that ability. So.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Beautiful. Okay. These are just some 3D perspectives of different angles of the home. We have the front porch that is elevated. The main floor of the house is elevated about 30 inches as we're currently proposing it above the average grade of the site. And so that in effect pushes the home up taller than what would normally be accustomed with a house that is actually sitting at grade. But we've taken the care to be sympathetic to this type of design and style for having an elevated porch and an elevated main floor, and the wainscoting in that particular to sort of offset that would be of some sort of stone or sandstone material, but that in effect then elevates the overall roof peak to something that is closer to 31. It would be closer to 28 if we weren't in fact elevating the home, as you see here. This little roof here is the one we're talking about over the covered patio. So, you know, with that, if this were to be uncovered, we'd be just under the 35% and be in full compliance and wouldn't have much concern over lot coverage. The elevation of the rear garage is very similar to the main house. We have a couple of dormers to allow some daylight into the garage space. Basically now these would be trusses that would allow for some storage up above, considering the garage size is really just enough to accommodate two vehicles. With that, we don't have any other concerns about the staff report other than the two being the roof height and the rear patio. We would like to try to maintain coverage on the rear patio. One of the things that we did with this particular design and its orientation on the site is that there's two large trees on the site. We're anticipating maintaining those at the front. There is another large tree that's not necessarily on the property. It's on an adjacent property that's rather large. And we've purposely oriented the patio and the functional backyard or the functional rear yard to maintain and accept kind of the large tree canopy that would occur in this northwest corner. So with that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ted or the applicant? Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilmot. Is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify?
I am Kate Henwood, 1116 North 12th Street. Again, quick comments. We just do ask that the project stay within the standard 35% lot coverage. Otherwise, we support staff's recommendation of approval.
Thank you, Ms. Henwood.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public wishing to testify this evening? It doesn't appear we have anyone. So, Mr. Wilmot, if you would like 5 additional minutes for rebuttal.
I don't think I have anything new to add there other than just maintaining the request for the roof. But if that becomes a reason or subject for denial, then we would just ask that we can work with staff on figuring out what the uncovered portion of that looks like.
Thank you so much. Any final questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. With that, I will close the public portion of the hearing and we'll consider a motion.
I've got Madam Chair, can I have a comment first?
Please.
Possible? Usually I'm only giving a motion first, so thank you for letting me do that. I just want to I'm interested in the opinion of the rest of the commissioners on the height of the house. On the staff's report and recommended conditions, it does suggest 28 feet for maximum height instead of 32. Even that, I think, is a significant height of this property. If you looked at the if you look at the street view on this block, all the homes are, I believe all but one are 1 story and not story and a half. So they're 1 story. They're short houses. So it's really out of character for this block, I think, for even 28 feet. There's nothing in our guidelines that says it needs to be 28 feet or it that specifically. And it is noted that the previous home on this lot was 24 feet high. So I've got some concerns on the height, and I'm interested in the other commissioners' comments. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Koski. Please, Commissioner Maroney.
I just have to agree with Koski. I feel like if you're starting from scratch, it's pretty easy to meet our requirements. And so it's hard for me to find a reason to be flexible with the lot coverage or the height where it's being designed specifically to be in this place and they're not working with around like a project and trying to make it work. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. I saw a lot of nods. So would somebody like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I have a comment. And maybe I need to make a motion first. I guess I'm just wondering if the other commissioners have a feeling that 28 feet would be a good height, or if it needs to be less. I'd really like to help the applicant move through and get going on their project. So I'd rather not deny something if we don't have to. But 28 feet seems high to me. So I'd love it if someone would make a motion.
I'll refrain from making a motion, but I'll give my thoughts, I suppose. 24 feet was a number that I felt maximally comfortable with. I still think even then that's a little bit high, but as a top number, I would be personally okay with that. I don't know if that's helpful to anyone. But we do have 2 more applications to get through this evening. So if we could make a motion for the sake of everyone's time.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'll give it a shot. I'll make a motion for DRH 21-75 for denial of project based on its height in the neighborhood. And I would encourage the applicant to work with city staff to bring something forward that is closer to 24 feet in height that would better fit in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Can we comment for just a second really fast before we vote?
Sure. Do you have a comment, Commissioner Rupp?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Rupp. I just was trying to look for the notes from our, for the summary, because I agree with Commissioner Koski and Maroney with regards to height, as well as lot coverage. But I thought we had notes where we could approve it, recognizing, I was trying to see if we could frame it with an approval, recognizing that we wanted it to be the lot coverage of 35 but I don't know, I can't find the notes that would appropriate like the height not to exceed. I think the way that they have it in the notes is the peak of the house shall not exceed 28 inches. The revised plan should be reviewed and approved by staff prior to submitting the building permit. But it sounds like everyone's wanting 24, not 28.
I mean, I believe that if someone were to make a motion, it could be amended to include whatever height we want. Is that correct?
Yeah, because it's condition E.
Yes.
So we have, the option to amend that rather than just denying the whole application.
Yeah.
Because it already says the maximum lot coverage should be 35%. So and I don't know if there's anything else in here that we would want to amend, but we could amend that. I guess the question I have is there's house 1209 next door, and my thought is that it shouldn't be either higher than that house or higher than 24 feet. I think the house that was there before was shorter than the house next door. So I guess I would be fine with it being a little bit higher than 24 feet as long as it's, not dominating over the neighboring house.
Yes, this is Commissioner Rupp, and I had to find E, but I was in support of approval based on the conditions of approval based on staff. So I feel comfortable with 28 inches. So that's the motion at the table right now is not that, but I just wanted to make.
Would you like to amend your motion, or would you like to go ahead and vote on that?
No, I'd like to, Madam Chair and Commissioners, I'd like to keep it at 24 feet. That was the significant part of the motion. I would like to, it'd be great if we could have the motion to approve with the condition that it meets 24 feet in height. But I believe by taking 8 feet off on height of that house, it's going to be a complete redesign. And then we'd be approving something that we have no idea what it's going to look like. So I will keep my motion as is.
Okay. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Nay.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Nay.
Weaver,
No.
Brown,
Aye.
Pape,
No.
Montoto,
Nay.
Kintai.
Nay.
Motion fails, 6 opposed, 2 in favor.
Would someone like to make a motion so we can get things moving?
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve DRH 21-00075 with staff's recommendations as noted in the staff report.
And I will second.
Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Nay.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Nay.
Pape,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
Motion carries 6 in favor, 2 opposed.
Just to clarify, Madam Chair, so the condition of 28 feet remains?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. We have 2 more applications this evening. I would like to get through them so that there are no deferrals to next month's meeting. So if we can be as efficient as possible, just again to value everyone's time. The next item we'll be hearing is DRH, item number 6. Yes.
Madam Chair, item number 6. You're
Yes,
right.
okay. I just wanted to make sure. Item number 6, DRH 21-00077, Gerald Courtwright at 709 West Eastman Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This is a request to demo an existing garage and construct a 2-story garage or partial 2-story garage with an accessory dwelling unit. I'll go through this quickly. This is the existing non-contributing house in the north end. This is another one. This is strangely oriented towards Eastman, so the lot front is on the lengthwise and the rear is on the lengthwise, so that does automatically kick in some issues with setbacks. With this structure, the way it's designed, it does, so I'll just go over quickly some of the issues that staff had. It does extend in front of the wall plane of the house, which is generally discouraged. And again, it's unfortunate that the house faces Eastman instead of the length of the property towards 7th. But we do have a condition of approval that the garage be pulled back, the ADU and garage be pulled back to not extend beyond the main wall plane of the house fronting Eastman. It will need even with that, it'll likely need a front setback variance, and it's going to need a rear setback variance, which is, again, this lengthwise, which has to be 15 feet. So the garage, you can see, has an entry here off of the alley that loads here. These are the floor plans, and the reason I added the floor plans on here is because there was some confusion with my review of the project in the floor plans and the elevations. I talked it through with the applicant, and I just think there needs to be some adjustments on the elevations. This is the main floor plan on the right, and so this is the upstairs on the left, and the upstairs should just cover this right side here with the wall plane of that garage door. So the second story just comes up to here. So there was just some confusion on the way I was reviewing these floor plans, because if you look at the floor plan, so it should be stepped back here with the garage coming with this wall here, but it appears there's just a straight wall plane on that rear elevation. So I think there just needs to be some adjustments on the elevations to make them clear and consistent with the floor plan of the structure. And these are the, these elevations I don't think are labeled correctly. This should actually, I think, be the right elevation, and this one is the left elevation if you're looking at it from the street, from Eastman Street. So just some alterations to make it consistent. This is the backyard. This is the existing garage structure that'll be removed, and this will be the general location of the new garage. And here's some alley shots. And then the concerns I had with the structure being in front of the house as it faces Eastman, and the elevations, I think, just need to be cleaned up and more in sync with the floor plans, or more clear. And with those conditions, staff could recommend approval of the project.
Thank you, Ted. Is the applicant present? Perfect. If you'd like to come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
I represent Holly Mitchell. My name's Gerald Courtwright, Clarity Dwellings. I live at 1102 1102 North 18th Street. And what would you like to know?
If you have any details that you'd like to make known to the commission, stating your case, why you think your project should be approved.
Sure.
Any issues you have.
The spirit of the design was to more utilize the space as it's traditionally intended. And so the layout of the original home, where the structure, the front door at one point was facing 7th Street. And so in the neighborhood directly, those homes are oriented in such a way where then their garages are backed up to the alleyway. And so it's consistent with the neighborhood and in the spirit of the neighborhood. And so I feel that it has a lot of merit there in that design. I understand Ted's perspective on this and the committee's perspective on pulling that back and maybe putting more of that living area up on top of the garage, because then that would bring it back from the main plane of the home. It would also help with that setback as well. And it's just kind of a weird thing, because you've got this side yard setback, which is typically 5 feet, and we're dealing with something that you can't really build a standard garage on, that would be typical and normal in this type of situation with a rear setback. And so, let's see, height as well. The height of this is the same height as the existing home. And then what's right next to it concerning massing is also, it's lower than the building right next to it as well by about 8 feet. And so in the spirit of, the neighborhood, I feel that the height is appropriate, the massing is appropriate. And if we do pull it back and put more of that living area up above the garage, then I think we can achieve a smaller building envelope and more appropriately meet the setbacks. So that's it.
Are there any questions for the applicant or for Ted? Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, thanks.
Is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify?
Hello, Kate Henwood, 1116 North 12th Street. Just quickly wanted to say that Nina appreciates that the project is well under the 35% lot coverage guideline and that there's no increase in impermeable paving. So we support the staff recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Henwood. Are there any members of the public tonight wishing to testify? Doesn't seem we have anyone. If the applicant would like, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal, or you can yield your time. They're going to yield. So with that, I will go ahead and close the public portion of the hearing, and we'll consider a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll put together a motion to try to get discussion started. I see some pretty significant and glaring items here that will back my motion. My motion will be to deny DRH 21-77 based on the front setback requirement of 20 feet and the proposal 6 feet. You're 14 foot over the setback requirement. A rear setback has got a 15-foot requirement and it's proposed 5 feet. You're 10 feet over the setback requirement. The house itself is only 1 inch taller than this ADU proposed. And based on 6.1.10 in our design guidelines, it says that design the accessory dwelling unit or garage to visually compete with or overpower the primary building on the lot. Not appropriate to do that. Those are the basis for my denial, but I'm open and willing to listen to the comments by the rest of the commissioners. Thank you.
Does anyone have any additional comments?
I just have a point of clarification. The 15-foot setback, I think it's 13 feet on here because they'd be coming in from the alley, right? So like the back of the garage where it says 5 feet, I think that's not where the garage door is, right? The garage door is on the left side. Am I reading this wrong or no?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, the garage will be loading from the alley this way. Because of the orientation of it's a strange orientation on this lot. So this rear, if the property was facing 7th Street, like the rest of the properties, this would be a 5-foot side setback, but unfortunately it's a rear setback, which is required to be 15 feet. So this is the rear along here for all intents and purposes, and it needs to be by code 15 feet. Same with the front. A garage can have a 15-foot setback from the property line, from a street side property line if it's a substandard and it loads from the alley, which this does. So 15 is required up here. So they will need a variance no matter what, even if they were to pull it back to be even with this wall plane on the house, likely variances. I think there's some justified variances here due to that orientation, but that's up to the commission. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, Ted.
Madam Chair, I have some additional comments, if I could. So my biggest concern here is we're pushing, well, we're exceeding the boundaries in multiple cases. The proposal exceeds the rear setback by a lot, 10 feet. I consider it a lot. From Ted's clarification there, we are now the front setback, they're exceeding that by 9 feet. I think the height is a concern, 1 inch difference. While that may be less in height from the house, that doesn't, I'm considering it not subservient potentially. And then also the issue that it's in closer to the street than the house is. So we're really, really exceeding on many bounds. And that's why I voted for my denial. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Koski. Would anyone like to make a motion?
My motion's on the table.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a second?
I will second his motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Rep. Any discussion before we vote?
This is Commissioner Rupp, and Commissioner Koski articulated it correctly for me. My concerns with setbacks.
Perfect. Thank you. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
No.
Brown,
Aye.
Pape,
Aye.
Marontodo,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
Motion carries 7 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, our last application this evening, item number 7, DRH 21-00078, Byron Falwell at 1707 North 9th Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request to construct a side addition and rear additions and a basement on a contributing house in the north end. This is an aerial of the property. Photo of the existing house. And this is a proposed site plan. So this, as far as the work that'll be visible on this, the addition here to the side, stepped back from the front of the house. And then here's some front and south elevations. So this part with the dormer would be the addition on the side. And these are the north and rear elevations. And this is a close-up of the facade with some notes by the applicant. So existing finishes to remain, doors and windows to be repaired. So these are non-historic later additions removed from the rear of the property. And again, a side view. So staff recommends approval of DRH 2178 with the conditions of approval in the report. You'll note in the report that staff did bring up the addition, and it is stepped back from this general wall plane area. It does match the height of the existing house, The commission in the past has approved additions that match the height, side additions that match the height of the existing house. Staff did not add a condition of approval concerning that, but just brought it up as a discussion item for the commission. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Any questions for Ted? Okay, thank you, Ted. Is the applicant present?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
Thank you. Byron Falwell, 199 North Capitol Boulevard, Boise, Idaho. Madam Chair, members of the commission, thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about this project. In the interest of brevity, I've prepared some statements here in lieu of a presentation. I've had the pleasure of working with the homeowners for the past few months on producing a right-sized remodel project that will accommodate their large family and provide a design that coordinates and contributes to the existing historic home. This working-class Victorian house is in need of structural stabilization and waterproofing in the existing sandstone foundation. We're proposing a concrete foundation be installed to accommodate a basement, which removes the need for larger above-ground additions. The remaining changes to the exterior are in the form of two modestly sized additions, one to the south, which is visible from the street, and one to the west, which faces the rear of the property. The south addition has been set back from the historic home facade by 12 inches per the Department of Interior standards. We believe this creates a nice, simple transition in massing and materials and provides an easy visual read from the street as to what elements are new and what elements are historic. We would appreciate the commission's approval of this project, and I'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Falwell? Okay, thank you so much.
I have a question. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Brown.
A little slow. I have a question for the architect. I was just wondering, can your project be achieved without the side addition if it were to be put on the rear, or the rear addition made larger?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, thank you for the question. The south addition encompasses most of the additional living space. And one thing that we really tried to do was preserve the historic parlor addition that was done sometime after the 1900s that faces the street. The south addition is kind of an attempt to provide the living space that parlor room doesn't really provide for the family. The existing historic house is kind of a warren of small rooms, and that parlor addition off on the front of the building is such a iconic design feature of the existing house that we didn't want to do anything with that, of course. And so the south addition really there provides the living and dining room spaces that are required to make the house livable.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify?
I am. Kate Henwood, 1116 North 12th Street. Just wanted to comment that Nina appreciates the design and the limited lot coverage, and just the fact that they're rehabilitating and adding onto an existing home rather than demolishing. So we support the staff recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henwood. You're a trooper. Are there any members of the public tonight wishing to testify? It doesn't appear so. Are there any final questions for staff or the applicant? If the applicant would like, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
I'll yield my time unless there's a concern that I can address from the commission.
It doesn't appear that there is, so thank you, Mr. Falwell. We will have you yield your time. And with that, I will close the public portion of the hearing and we'll consider a motion.
So I guess I'll motion. So I motion to deny DRH 21-0007 based on our design guidelines that is generally not appropriate to construct a new addition that creates an appearance inconsistent with the historic character of the building and use, which is 4.1.10, and then also 4.1.11 overpower, cover, obscure, or eliminate historically significant architectural, stylistic, character-defining features such as windows, doors, porches, and roof lines. Just a note for me that side addition, it's too large. This is a small, modest folk Victorian house. Adding an addition of this size that's visible from the street view, I think could compromise its contributing status in the historic district. So those are my comments and motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Would anyone like to second?
Madam Chair, I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Koski. Any discussion before we vote?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm open for comments from the other commissioners on this one. I actually agree with Commissioner Brown on 4.1.10 and 4.1.11. If Ted, maybe you could pull up a slide on page 426 on our slide. It's the front photo of the house. Yeah, one more, the very front shot. I have it. There we go. Knowing this block and knowing this street and knowing this house, it's a skinny house. and its front facing elevation, as you see, part of the defining characteristic of the historic part of this, I believe, is the fact that this house isn't very wide. And while we've approved additions on sides of homes, if it's set back from the front, the distance that we're looking at here, I think what really is affecting my thoughts is that addition on the south is next to that open porch. So for instance, if the addition would be on the north side, I don't know if the impact would be as great, but I think that addition on the south side, even though it's set back from the front of the house, is right next to that open porch. So it very much shares a similar plane, while be a couple inches off maybe of the front wall of the porch, I guess. So that's why I'm really struggling with this one. I'm struggling. I'd be interested to hear what other commissioners have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Koski. Would anyone else like to offer thoughts before we vote on this motion?
Madam Chair, I just want to say that I will not be voting yay on this motion because I believe that this addition is set back far enough. I think it's modest and I think it has a nice balance with the house.
Thank you, Commissioner Maroney. With that, Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Nay.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Nay.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Pape,
Nay.
Montoto,
Nay.
Kintai.
Nay.
Motion fails, 5 opposed, 3 in favor.
Would anyone like to make a new motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve DRH 2178 with staff. With staff's constraints.
I will second.
Was that Commissioner Rupp?
Yes.
Thank you. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Nay.
Maroney,
Hi.
Weaver,
Nay.
Brown,
Nay.
Leap,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
Motion carries 5 in favor, 3 opposed.
Okay, that concludes our hearing for this evening. Thank you all so much for your participation, and we will convene at our April 26th hearing.
Thank you. Good night.
9:30.